This book is not a guide to harm people. It is a guide to see clearly and protect yourself. Mareska Manipulation is a simple map that shows what happens under the surface of nice words, smiles, and promises. Every day we face influence. A targeted ad. A sweet compliment with a hidden cost. A limited time offer. A comparison that makes one choice look best. Sometimes this influence is honest. Sometimes it slowly turns into a quiet trap. Your job is to see the strings before they tighten. That is what Mareska helps you do. Think of manipulation as psychological engineering. It has three parts: motive, why, method, how, and context, where. This is the Mareska triangle. When the motive is control or greed, the method hides the truth, and the context is rushed or confusing, you are facing real manipulation. Ethical influence is different. It respects your awareness. It gives you time to think. It is open about facts and welcomes your right to say no. This line between dark and fair influence will guide us through the whole book. You may read this book for two reasons. 1. To protect yourself, your relationships, and your work from hidden pressure. 2. To understand influence better so you can speak clearly, negotiate fairly, and stay firm without being used or using others. In both cases, you will find simple language, real examples, and short exercises that help you turn knowledge into habit. I will not give you tricks to dominate. I will give you tools to notice. How to catch the first number that bends your choice. How to slow down when someone builds fake urgency. How to spot a compliment that asks for payment later. How to steady your emotions when someone plays hot, cold games with your attention. You will also learn that real power begins with calm. Calm is not weakness. It is the space where details become clear. We will build a small, practical shield together, short pauses before big decisions, quick questions that force clarity, a tiny trigger log to track what throws you off, and polite phrases that let you say no without a fight. You will practice checking evidence instead of following the crowd. You will learn to separate real expertise from a shiny title, and true desire from the fear of losing what you already invested. This book prefers respect over quick wins. We will treat ethics not as decoration but as a long-term strategy. Trust is capital. Clarity saves you from costly mistakes. Honest communication brings cooperation you cannot fake. Yes, you will study the common tricks of manipulators. But you will also learn clean influence, how to set a fair frame for a talk, how to handle disagreement without emotional blackmail, and how to offer value so people choose your option with open eyes, not hidden pressure. How should you read this book? You can go in order, because the chapters move from basic ideas to tools, then to defense and strong, fair negotiation. Or you can jump to what you need now. If countdowns and deadlines push you around, read the chapters on scarcity and urgency. If gifts make you feel you owe someone, start with the reciprocity chapter. If you want to be firm without being rude, try the chapters on framing, batna, and graceful exit. Before we begin, set your intention. This book is not a mask to control others. It is a mirror to see yourself and the world more clearly. If you use these tools to take away someone's choice, you may win small battles but lose big things: your reputation, your relationships, and your own honesty. If you use them as a shield and a compass, you will gain something better: quiet strength, freedom to choose, and mutual respect that lasts after the deal is done. In the pages ahead, we will move from a simple question, "What is happening to me right now?" to a strong answer, "I see the game, and I choose." When you choose with clear eyes, you do more than protect yourself. You raise the standard around you. In this way, Mareska Manipulation becomes more than a title. It becomes a daily habit, the habit of awareness, the habit of clarity, the habit of responsibility. We will not scare you with darkness. We will light it just enough so you can find your way. Welcome. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Roots of Manipulation. Power rarely arrives with a shout. It slips in with a whisper, takes your hand like a friend, and guides you somewhere you think you chose. Here is the paradox that lives at the center of human history. The same mind that resists control is hungry to be led, and the same heart that wants freedom seeks the warmth of a guiding voice when the world feels cold. If we are honest, we don't just fear manipulation, we fear the places inside us that find it comforting. If you stand far enough back, the story begins in firelight. Long before kings and crowns, a small circle formed around the sharpest voice in the tribe, the one who could turn danger into a story that made sense. Survival needed coordination, coordination needed belief, belief needed a persuader. In early courts, the first advisors were not always soldiers, they were listeners, readers of faces, translators of fear. They learned the tempo of human nerves, how to slow a crowd with a calm tone or ignite it with a single, charged image. They discovered that the mind moves most easily when it thinks it is walking on its own. Ancient philosophers noticed the same currents. Some argued that truth should win on its own. Others accepted a rougher truth, that humans are not logic first, they are attachment first, and persuasion must pass through the gate of feeling. From this tension, a craft was born. You can find its fingerprints in every age: the empire that told its people they were chosen, the general who won battles before they were fought by shaping what his enemies expected, the priest who turned obedience into a promise of safety, the merchant who learned to frame a price as a story about status rather than numbers. The tools changed: masks, myths, symbols, slogans, but the hand that held them was always the same. When people think about the history of manipulation, they rush to the familiar names of princes and pamphlets, but the real archive is smaller and closer. It is the way parents shape a child's choices by dressing them as virtues. It is the way lovers learn to nudge each other with silence, with praise, with small withdrawals of warmth until the relationship learns a rhythm that serves one more than the other. It is the way communities define the outsider and the insider, then sell belonging as a cure for fear. We inherited a nervous system tuned for danger and a social brain tuned for acceptance. Put those together and you get minds that can be led with the right mixture of threat and relief. Across centuries, the costume changes: stone tablets turn to scrolls, scrolls to books, books to screens, screens to feeds, but the choreography stays. Fear contracts attention, relief opens it, repetition settles it, and identity locks it in. The ancient court whisperer lives today in the notification that tells you don't miss out, in the headline that gives you a villain before it gives you a fact, in the staged urgency that rents space in your attention and then pretends it has always lived there. Persuasion did not evolve because humans are weak. It evolved because we are social, and social creatures move together. Our ancestors who coordinated, survived. But coordination requires a center, and a center requires influence. The earliest leaders learned that command backed by force is expensive, command backed by belief is elegant. Philosophy and politics grew around this discovery like ivy around stone. Thinkers tried to dress power in ethics. If persuasion could lift the many, maybe it was good. If it served only the few, maybe it was poison. Yet in the real world, power wore both robes. It built roads and it built cages. It taught reading and it taught obedience. Whenever a tool can shape minds, it will be borrowed by kindness and by cruelty. The printing press spread faith and doubt, liberation, and propaganda. Early public relations reframed opinion by clothing private interests in public virtue. Modern social engineering learned to ask less, how can I force you, and more, how can I make you want to step where I want you to step? The force is softer now, but not weaker. If anything, it is more intimate. It speaks in your voice and arrives as your own thought. Beneath the history sits the engine, the psychology of control. Why do humans crave dominance and obedience at the same time? Because both answer the same question in different ways: how do I feel safe? Dominance promises safety by shaping the world to your will. Obedience promises safety by letting someone else carry the burden of choosing. When life is chaotic, certainty seduces. When choices are heavy, surrender feels like rest. The body keeps score with chemicals, hope and relief fire like stars, and we start to chase whichever person or platform gives us more of that sky. Status taps an ancient need to be seen. Belonging taps an ancient fear of being left outside the firelight. The mind prefers stories that keep our tribe good and the other tribe wrong because it protects our standing and simplifies our choices. We lean toward authority because trusting a confident voice has often been faster than waiting for perfect truth. We mirror those we admire because mirroring kept us inside the group. We give back when given to because reciprocity once kept small bands alive. None of this makes us foolish, it makes us human. But it also makes us steerable. Control exploits the gaps between our stories and our sensations. Say something with enough certainty, and many of us will feel calmer and assume it is true. Pair a command with a gift, and many of us will call the command kindness. Surround a claim with faces that feel like people like us, and many of us will soften and nod along. Call an idea scarce, and its value swells in our chest before our mind can ask, scarce for whom? Frame a choice to make one path feel like loyalty and another feel like betrayal, and the body will choose loyalty even when the facts are muddy. In this way, the psychology behind control does not need to be brilliant, it needs to be patient. It feeds small rewards and small fears in a rhythm that trains us to move toward the hand that is training us. Over time, we mistake that rhythm for our own heartbeat. Yet there is a quieter truth behind the dark one. Influence is not a theft by default. It can be a gift, a way of steadying the ladder while someone climbs. The same circuitry that makes us manipulable also makes us teachable, coachable, comforted, inspired. The difference is consent and clarity. When influence names its goal, its cost, and your freedom to decline, it honors your mind. When manipulation hides its goal, hides its cost, and collapses your freedom into a false urgency, it hijacks your mind. Across history, the healthiest cultures were not the ones without influence, they were the ones that taught their people to see it. They gave names to the moves so the moves lost their magic. They taught pauses. They taught how to hold a feeling without obeying it. They taught that a confident voice is not the same thing as a true one, that a crowd's agreement is not the same thing as evidence, that a story that makes you feel safe is not the same thing as a safe reality. This is the inheritance we are after, not suspicion, but sight. To understand the roots of manipulation is also to understand our own roots. Most of us learned our first manipulations not from tyrants but from tenderness under stress. We negotiated love and attention with the tools we had. We learned which tears opened doors, which silences made people lean in, which sacrifices bought peace at home. We became small strategists because our bodies wanted safety and connection and didn't yet have the language to ask for them cleanly. Growing up is, in part, unlearning the shortcuts and replacing them with honesty, telling the truth about what we want, hearing no without making it proof that we are unworthy, offering yes without making it a hidden invoice. Mastery over manipulation begins with mastery over the self that feels itches to manipulate. When we can soothe those itches, we stop scratching other people's lives to calm our own nerves. If this sounds moral, it is, but it is also practical. A centered mind is harder to herd. A person who can sit with uncertainty is harder to stampede. A listener who can separate tone from truth is harder to sell a lie to. The work ahead will give you old stories and new names, but its aim is simple, to make your attention yours again. We will walk through the courts and markets of the past and the screens and feeds of the present, and we will map the levers: fear, pride, belonging, scarcity, flattery, threat, relief, so you can feel them being pulled without losing your balance. You will learn to spot the frame before it frames you, to hear the hook before it holds you, to sense the rhythm before it trains you. And then you will choose, not react. The roots of manipulation reach deep, but so do yours. You carry older wisdom than any tool aimed at you, the ability to pause, to ask, to remember who you are before the story tries to rewrite you. If this chapter opened a door for you, step with me into the next. We'll move from the firelight of the past into the bright theater of the present and start practicing how to see the strings without hating the puppets. Like and subscribe if this journey matters to you, and share it with the one person in your life who needs their center back. The world will always whisper. Together we'll learn which whispers to trust and which to let pass like wind over tall grass. Chapter 2: The Mareska Method Unveiled. There is a moment, right before a decision is made, when the heart leans first and the mind follows pretending it led. If you can feel that lean, if you can name it without shaming it, you hold the key to every door that ever seemed locked from the outside. That is the promise and the warning of Mareska. Mareska Manipulation, as a framework, is not a dark spell or a secret society handshake. It is a clean set of lenses for seeing how perceptions are shaped, how emotions are leveraged, and how choices are steered, sometimes gently, sometimes with quiet force. It does not require genius or cruelty. It requires attention, timing, and the humility to accept that humans are not moved by ideas alone. We are moved by meanings that touch our nerves. The Mareska framework asks 3 questions in a loop that never really ends. What am I truly seeing? How is influence being applied? Where has control been ceded or reclaimed? Observation, influence, control, the 3 pillars. They are not steps so much as currents that braid together, and the river they form is emotional leverage, the foundation of all manipulation, for good or harm. Observation is the art of daylight. It sounds passive, but it is the most demanding pillar because it requires you to perceive without projection. To observe is to step out of your story and watch the one unfolding in front of you. It is hearing the exact words someone says, and also noticing the pauses between them. It is clocking the small wince when a topic is raised, the tilt of the head when a price is mentioned, the way a person's breathing changes when you say, "Take your time," versus "You'll miss out." It is paying attention to your own body equally, the small tightening when you feel cornered, the warm pull when someone flatters your identity, the soft float of relief when a complex choice is framed as simple. In the Mareska method, observation is not about suspicion, it is about precision. You stop guessing motives and you start naming moves, a frame that narrows options, a mirror that makes you feel seen, a future promise that asks you to pay with present obedience. With strong observation, you recognize the moment a feeling tries to become a fact. That single recognition can save you weeks of regret. Influence is the art of motion. It is not inherently manipulative, it is how humans pass energy to one another. Words are influence. Silence is influence. A well-placed question is influence. The Mareska pillar of influence studies the channels through which motion flows: language, rhythm, status, reciprocity, scarcity, belonging, and asks whether the motion respects consent. Influence can be a hand at your back when you are tired. It can be a finger under your chin lifting your gaze toward a possibility you had forgotten. But it can also be a hook in the mouth of your fear dragging you somewhere you wouldn't go in daylight. The Mareska lens helps you feel the difference by noticing the cost being hidden or revealed. If someone is giving you confidence by naming trade-offs plainly, that is clean influence. If someone is borrowing your confidence by skipping the trade-offs, that is manipulation already at work. Learning this pillar means learning to use influence with integrity and to resist it with grace. You won't need to fight every current when you can choose which ones carry you toward the life you actually want. Control, in this framework, is the art of boundaries. The word can make people flinch, but in Mareska it doesn't mean domination, it means stewardship. Control is the place where you decide how much of your attention, your emotion, and your choice you will loan to a moment and on what terms. In the wrong hands, control is seized by collapsing your options, by flooding you with urgency, by making your nervous system believe that relief lives in only one direction. In your hands, control is reclaimed by restoring options, slowing the timeline, and widening your frame until you can breathe enough to choose. Control asks simple, grounding questions. Do I understand the cost? Do I have time to think? What happens if I say no? When your answers are clear, you are not unkind, you are unbullyable. You can love deeply and still keep the keys to your inner house. All 3 pillars meet in emotional leverage, the quiet force beneath every persuasive act. Emotional leverage is not emotion itself, it is how emotion is positioned to move you. Think of it like a hand on a door. Fear tightens the grip, hope loosens it, pride polishes the handle, belonging paints the room behind it in warm colors. A skilled persuader studies which feeling opens you, then arranges the conversation to touch that feeling at the right angle and the right temperature. This is not a rare talent. Parents do it when they soothe a crying child into sleep, teachers do it when they turn confusion into curiosity, leaders do it when they steady a crowd. But when emotional leverage is used without consent, it becomes a theft that looks like a gift. A marketer paints scarcity on an ordinary product and your heartbeat writes the check. A partner alternates distance and affection until your nervous system chases the next high. A public voice binds your identity to a single opinion and disagreement begins to feel like self-betrayal. You are not foolish when this works on you, you are human. That is why the Mareska method trains sensitivity rather than shame. We learn to feel the lever being placed before it is pulled. Let's bring this closer. Imagine a conversation where someone says, "Everyone who understands this takes action today." Observation notices the tell, an appeal to belonging and competence wrapped together. Influence recognizes the tactic, tribe plus urgency. Control asks for the invoice, what happens if I wait? What data am I not being shown? Emotional leverage hears the intended sensation, the quick heat of FOMO in the chest. With those four understandings layered, you do not need to argue or defend yourself. You breathe, you widen your frame, you make your choice. The scene loses its spell because you named it. That is Mareska working quietly in your favor. Used ethically, this framework becomes a way of caring for others without stealing their agency. You can craft messages that speak to real hopes and real fears while telling the truth about costs. You can teach by building scaffolds of feeling that lift a person instead of boxing them in. You can sell without smuggling shame into the offer. You can lead without borrowing panic to get compliance. The secret is redundancy, saying the same thing to the mind and the body. Here is what this is. Here is why it matters. Here is the cost. Here is your freedom. When influence and honesty repeat each other, trust grows. When influence and concealment contradict each other, trust eventually shatters, even if the tactic wins for a while. The Mareska method also asks you to watch your own inner manipulator with kindness. You will feel the urge, sometimes, to nudge a friend with guilt because asking directly feels risky. You will feel the temptation to frame a choice for your partner so your preference becomes the only reasonable one. You will want to hide the cost of your needs so your needs look easier to meet. These are human reflexes born from old fears. Bringing them into daylight does not make you unlovable, it makes you safe to love. When you can say, "A part of me wants to steer this, but I'm going to tell you what I want instead," you are practicing Mareska as liberation, not control. That practice is contagious. People around you begin to mirror your clarity. Rooms get cleaner without getting colder. If there is one habit to carry from this chapter, let it be the pause, tiny, ordinary, life-saving. The pause between stimulus and response is where observation blooms, where influence reveals its seams, where control returns to your hands, where emotional leverage is felt instead of obeyed. In that beat, your nervous system stops being a puppet and becomes a partner. In that beat, you stop being dragged by the strongest feeling in the room and start being guided by your values. The more you practice it, the more natural it feels to say, "I see the frame, I feel the pull, and I choose on purpose." This is the Mareska method unveiled, not a trick, but a discipline, not a weapon, but a language, not a way to win at other people's expense, but a way to stop losing yourself in the noise. If this resonated, stay with me. In the next chapter, we will step deeper into the mechanics of emotional leverage, how specific feelings are triggered, stacked, and timed, and how to meet each one with steadiness instead of surrender. Like this if it is helping you see, subscribe if you want the rest of the map, and share it with someone who needs to breathe before they choose. The game is often invisible. You don't have to be. Chapter 3: The Psychology of Vulnerability. The most dangerous chains are the ones we knit for ourselves, loops of fear, hope, and longing that feel like comfort until someone pulls them tight. Here's the paradox. What makes us beautifully human, our need to belong, to be seen, to be safe, also makes us steerable in the hands of someone willing to press where we're already tender. Why are some people more easily influenced than others? Not because they are weak or foolish, but because their nervous systems learned certain lessons early and never got new ones. A child who needed to be perfect to earn peace grows into an adult whose boundary melts when approval shines on them. Someone who felt love vanish without warning grows into a listener who chases reassurance even when the cost is high. A person who survived chaos by pleasing everyone carries a reflex that reads harmony as safety and disagreement as danger. Influence walks in through those old doors because they're familiar. The body recognizes the pattern and says yes before the mind reads the terms. This chapter is not here to shame those doors. It is here to help you find the keys. Emotional triggers are not defects, they are shortcuts the body uses to move fast. Fear, guilt, love, approval, insecurity, these are not abstract ideas, they are physical events. Fear narrows your vision and speeds your decisions. Guilt makes you imagine someone else's pain and volunteer to carry it. Love opens your chest and loosens your logic because the goal is connection, not precision. Approval warms you with the ancient glow of belonging. I am safe with the tribe. Insecurity sits like a low hum that says, prove you deserve to be here, and you start overgiving, over-explaining, overworking. Each of these states is understandable. Each can be used to help you grow. But when a manipulator meets them, they become levers. Fear is the strongest lever because it contracts the present into a single exit. When fear is triggered, the body says, move now, think later. A manipulator doesn't always need a real threat, a suggestion is enough. You'll lose this chance, people like you never get a break, if you don't act, someone else will. They don't prove the danger, they perform it, and your nervous system does the rest. The antidote isn't bravado, it's breath. Slow breathing quietly tells the threat center, we are not in a burning building. When your lungs lead, your choices follow. Guilt is a more elegant lever because it dresses control as virtue. A skilled manipulator won't accuse, they'll imply. After everything I've done, I guess I expected more from you, you know how much this means to me. Guilt makes the scale unfair, you weigh your action, they weigh your character. If you say no, you're not declining a request, you're failing as a person. The clean defense is to separate deed from identity. I care about you and I'm still saying no. That sentence is a boundary in soft clothing. It refuses the hidden invoice without turning love into a debate. Love is the sweetest lever and therefore the hardest to see. Love bombing works not because people are greedy for affection, but because attention is a nutrient and many of us have been hungry. When someone studies you and reflects back your best self, when they mirror your tastes, name your dreams, and promise you a future sized like a glove for your hand, your body says, home. The manipulation isn't the tenderness, it's the speed and the symmetry. Real intimacy learns slowly and disagrees kindly. Performative intimacy agrees with everything and accelerates. If you want to protect your heart without hardening it, watch for pace. Ask, is this closeness earning roots, or just drawing vines? Approval flips the same coin. Our species survived by reading faces and adjusting to keep the group. That reflex is still inside us, and manipulators tint their glasses so you only see yourself through their approval. They offer praise as oxygen and then hold their breath until you perform. You begin to live for the next nod. Notice when your energy spikes after a compliment and crashes after silence, that rhythm is training, not truth. Healthy approval feels like sunlight. You grow because you are nourished, not because you are sprinting to escape shade. Insecurity is the quiet, constant lever. It doesn't shout, it tilts the floor. If part of you believes you are not enough, not smart enough, attractive enough, experienced enough, then you will pay more for the same seat everyone else occupies. You'll accept worse terms because you're grateful to be in the room. Manipulators smell this, not because they are mystical, but because insecurity speaks through posture, through apologetic language, through the way you pre-discount your needs. The work here is not to become arrogant, it is to become accurate. Accuracy says, I am not perfect, and I am not a beggar. When your worth is steady inside, you stop renting it from other people at abusive rates. How do manipulators identify and exploit weaknesses? They ask ordinary questions and listen like scientists. What are you worried about? What do you want most right now? Who let you down? They throw small pebbles and watch which ones ripple the water, mentions of time pressure, of exclusivity, of family, of loyalty, of being special. They mirror your language to build comfort, then tilt it to aim your choices. They test boundaries gently at first, showing up late, making a joke at your expense, asking for a small favor that lives just outside your comfort zone. If you swallow it, the next ask grows teeth. They frame their needs as mutual goals. Your no becomes not a team player. Your yes becomes the new baseline. The most skilled don't look like villains, they look like helpers whose help always costs a little more than you realized. The defense against this isn't suspicion of everyone. It's a steady relationship with your own triggers. When you know fear's voice, you can greet it without obeying it. When you spot guilt's costume, you can love without paying counterfeit debts. When approval warms you, you can enjoy it while keeping your keys. When insecurity whispers, you can answer with specific memories of competence instead of generic shame. Self-knowledge does not make you untouchable, it makes you choosy about what touches you. Bring this down to the ground. A job offer arrives with language that flatters your ambition and presses urgency. Your chest tightens the way fear and opportunity mix. Instead of answering the email with adrenaline, you pause. You name the moves. Fear, act now. Approval, we chose you. Insecurity, this might be your only shot. Then you breathe, you widen your time horizon, you ask for the details in writing, you check the numbers when your body is cool. If the offer is good, it will survive daylight. If it's theater, the lights will make it cheaper to say no. In love, a partner begins to withdraw when you hold a boundary and floods you with affection when you fold. You notice the training, distance as punishment, closeness as reward. Instead of begging for warmth or punishing with silence, you name what you see gently and firmly. I feel a pattern, affection when I agree, distance when I don't. I want love that can live with no as well as yes. That sentence won't fix an unhealthy person, but it will protect a healthy you. It exposes the lever and asks for another way to move. With family, an elder uses guilt to recruit your time in ways that break your life and calls refusal disrespect. You separate honor from obedience. You offer clear, limited help. You stop paying with resentment and start paying with honesty. Love that demands self-erasure is not love, it is hunger dressed as tradition. You can honor the past without bankrupting your future. If any of this stirs shame in you because you recognize yourself as easily influenced, take a softer breath. Influence is not a failure, it is the fabric of being human. You were built to be moved by beauty, by kindness, by truth, by need. The goal is not to become stone. The goal is to become an instrument you play on purpose. That means learning your triggers the way a musician learns tones. You will still feel fear, you'll just stop letting fear write your contracts. You will still feel guilt, you'll just stop paying for admission to rooms that don't treat you with care. You will still crave love and approval, you'll just stop renting them from people who weaponize your hunger. This chapter is a mirror, not a verdict. Look into it and recognize the lines of your life, the strengths that grew beside your tender places, the wisdom that waited beneath your reflexes. If you found yourself in these words, stay with me. In the next chapter, we will move from knowing your levers to managing them, simple practices that keep your center when someone tries to move it. Like this if it helped you breathe, subscribe if you want the rest of the map, and share it with the one person who needs to hear that vulnerability is not a curse, it is power waiting for a steward. Chapter 4: Emotional Puppeteering. The quickest way to move a person is not to push their body but to tilt their feeling, give the heart a reason to lean, and the mind will swear it chose to step. That is the secret corridor behind every yes that surprises us later. Emotions decided, and logic arrived afterward to dress the decision in formal clothes. Emotional puppeteering is a harsh name for something that shows up in soft clothes. It can look like patience, like reassurance, like a friend who knows exactly when to nod. It can also look like theater, like timing, like a small, deliberate pause that lets a silence grow hungry until the other person fills it with agreement. The techniques are rarely dramatic. They are small adjustments to temperature and light inside a conversation. The tone lowers to calm your nervous system. The pace slows to make a claim sound inevitable. The vocabulary shifts from I and you to we, and suddenly your guard relaxes because belonging has been implied. Emotional steering is often nothing more than contouring attention, dim what would raise questions, spotlight what would soothe. A seasoned persuader doesn't argue with your logic, they work with your rhythm. They watch your breath, your eyes, your micro shrugs. When you lean in, they keep you there. When you flinch, they soften the angle and return later. None of this needs cruelty to be effective, it only needs sensitivity and intent. The mirror effect is the most trusted instrument in this quiet orchestra. Mirroring is an ancient social glue. Two strangers match posture unconsciously and feel safer. Two voices fall into the same cadence and feel understood. In clean hands, mirroring is empathy made visible. I see you, I can meet you where you are. In manipulative hands, mirroring is the bait that turns trust into traction. A manipulator listens for the note you play and then plays it back with just a touch more resonance. Your frustration. They carry it, too. Your dream. They dreamed it first. Your wound. They bleed in the same place. The room fills with familiarity so quickly that your body reports tribe before your mind has checked the map. When someone reflects you perfectly, you may forget to ask who they are without the reflection. Real closeness includes difference. Mirroring that never introduces a true edge, never says, I see it differently, never holds a boundary, is not empathy, it is choreography. The safest response is not suspicion but pacing. Let similarity be a beginning, not a conclusion. Give rapport time to prove it can survive disagreement. Empathy itself can become an instrument, and this is where things get morally delicate. To feel with another is the most human of gifts. It's how we cradle a crying child, how we comfort a friend, how we teach without shaming. But empathy can also be used as a tool for compliance. Imagine someone who enters your sorrow like a careful guest, studies where the floor creaks, and then arranges their message to step only on the boards that won't wake the house. They understand what you fear losing, so they frame their request as a safeguard. They understand what you long for, so they paint their path in the colors of your desire. They do not threaten, they harmonize. The ask feels like a rescue. You don't notice the cost because the cost is packaged inside relief. This is why empathy without transparency can be dangerous. It makes manipulation feel like care. The ethical pivot is simple to describe and hard to practice. Use empathy to inform honesty, not to replace it. Say what you understand and then say what you want and what it will cost. When empathy is paired with daylight, it heals. When empathy is paired with concealment, it binds. There are other subtle guidances that move emotion without announcing themselves. Future pacing, talking as if the decision has already been made, invites your imagination to step over the line and then asks your body to follow. Presuppositions hide instructions inside neutral sentences. When you start this, you'll feel lighter, slips past debate because your mind is busy picturing the feeling. Anchoring pairs a feeling with a cue so that later, when the cue returns, the feeling follows and you mistake the echo for truth. Repetition launders novelty into normalcy. The third time you hear a claim, it stops feeling intrusive and starts feeling familiar, and the body often confuses familiar with safe. Scarcity compresses time and widens appetite. Exclusivity upgrades ordinary things with the price tag of status. Reciprocity turns a gift into a leash if the giver keeps tugging it. None of these require scripts. They require attention to where a person's hope and worry already live. Emotional puppeteering is not the creation of desire out of thin air. It is the arrangement of a scene so that existing desires play the leading roles. If you want to become immune to these moves, you won't succeed. Immunity is a myth. What you can cultivate is discernment so steady that strings, when attached, have nothing sticky to hold. Discernment begins with noticing your own thresholds. When do you rush? When does praise tilt the floor? When does silence make you chase? When does a confident voice become a substitute for evidence? When does we make you surrender your I? None of these reflexes are shameful. They are simply levers you should operate yourself. When fear arrives, breathe until your body remembers that thinking is allowed. When approval warms you, enjoy it and keep your keys. When love opens you, let it, and still ask to see the terms. When guilt knocks, invite it to the table and check the invoice line by line. The quietest defense is pace. Slowness restores choice. For those building influence ethically, the same principles become a craft of care. Guide emotions to help someone choose what truly serves them. Mirror to make space for trust, not to manufacture consent. Use empathy to see the whole person and then offer honest options, including the option to walk away. Speak to the body in the same language you offer the mind. This is what it is, this is what it isn't, this is what it costs, this is what it gives. People can feel the difference between being escorted and being herded. Escorting respects their steps. Herding depends on their panic. One of the tender truths of this chapter is that many of us practice emotional puppeteering by accident. We nudge loved ones because we are afraid of losing them. We choose timing over clarity because we doubt our needs will be heard without performance. We offer help that hides a hook because asking directly is vulnerable. The Mareska approach doesn't ask you to become sterile, it asks you to become straightforward. Say what you feel. Say what you want. Say what you fear. Ask what they hear. Accept what they choose. Manipulation thrives where needs are smuggled. It starves where truth is ordinary. Imagine a conversation where someone tries to steer you with perfect reflection. They match your mood, your cadence, your values. It feels like standing in front of a warm mirror. Instead of melting, you test for depth gently. You shift a small opinion and see whether their agreement shifts, too. You add a boundary and notice whether warmth survives. You ask a question that has no obvious social answer. What do you think I'm missing? And watch whether curiosity appears or performance continues. If the mirror fogs and a person emerges, trust can grow. If the mirror stays spotless no matter what you do, you are not with a person, you are with a technique, and you can choose to step back. Emotional puppeteering will always exist because emotion will always be the doorway to action. The goal is not to bar the door, it is to become the doorkeeper. Let love in, but not love as bait. Let urgency in, but not urgency as theater. Let empathy in, but not empathy as leash. When you keep that watch, you do not become cold, you become clear, and clarity is warm in its own honest way. It tells the truth without trying to trap anyone in it. It lets other people be free, and it accepts that your worth is not a prize you must win every hour. Chapter 5: Words as Weapons. A single sentence can open a door in your mind, or lock it. The tongue weighs almost nothing, yet it can lift a life, bend a crowd, and bury a truth without ever raising its voice. That is the paradox of language. The sharpest blades arrive as breath. Linguistic manipulation begins with something simple, the way a phrase touches the nervous system before it reaches the intellect. Tone is a temperature. Phrasing is a frame. A calm cadence can smuggle urgency, a warm voice can deliver coercion, a confident rhythm can make an unproven claim feel like a memory you forgot to have. When someone says, "Everyone knows this," your mind searches for the missing everyone. When they say, "The smart choice is obvious," your body flinches at the risk of looking foolish. Words tilt the floor. Most of us don't notice the angle until we're already walking. And yet we feel it. We feel it in the way certain sentences shrink our choices, in the way a gentle "we" makes our own boundary feel impolite, in the way a question shaped like a compliment becomes a leash we wear with a grateful smile. You're the kind of person who takes action, right? Isn't a question, it's a costume handed to you with your name stitched inside. Framing is the oldest magic trick that never needed a cape. If I call a tax a contribution, resistance softens. If I call it a burden, resentment grows. If I describe a 90% survival rate, your heart steadies. Describe a 10% chance of death and your jaw tightens, even though the math hasn't moved. The picture matters because the body reacts to pictures faster than it debates ideas. Reframing, done honestly, helps people see a wider truth. Done dishonestly, it makes a narrow story look like a horizon. Watch how often a mistake becomes a lesson, a pressure becomes an opportunity, a demand becomes a request, a consequence becomes a misunderstanding. The words do not change the event, they change your posture toward it. The art of suggestion lives here, in these small turns of language that feel like doors swinging on well-oiled hinges. When you get started, sneaks past the question of whether you will. After you join, strolls past the guard at if. People like us don't hesitate, dresses conformity as identity. Suggestions thrive in implication because implication speaks to the part of you that wants to belong without the embarrassment of needing instructions. Tone is a sculptor. A leader can say, "We will face challenges," and the room braces, say, "We're built for what's next," and the same room lifts its chin. The difference is not fact, it's music. Con artists know this music by heart. They never sell you an object, they sell you a sentence you want to believe. This isn't for everyone, wakes your hunger for exceptionality. I picked you because you're sharp, lowers your skepticism because to question now would be to question your own status. They speak in confident specifics when offering hope and in vague poetry when referring to proof. They name a small personal risk you've taken to signal intimacy. Only someone as decisive as you would see this, and your body tilts to protect the identity they handed you. They don't force you to trust them, they invite you to protect your story, and you hold the door open for them yourself. Marketers live on this border between promise and proof, and the clean ones work hard to keep daylight between the two. The best don't lie, they arrange truth so it lands where you can feel it. They know that a headline must be a hook, not a verdict, that a product description must translate features into feelings without pretending feelings are facts, that a guarantee disarms fear more honestly than hype. The dangerous ones study the same levers and remove the brakes. They swap limited supply for scarcity theater, expert recommended for expert selected by us, as low as for only if you're the rare case. They label ordinary actions as signals of identity. Real achievers choose premium, so that your purchase becomes a vote for who you are allowed to be. This is the subtle injury language can do. It makes choices into proofs of worth and disagreement into social exile. When words carry that much moral weight, thinking starts to feel like betrayal. Leaders, real leaders, know that language can carry a community through a storm or steer it into one. The integrity test is simple and difficult. Do the words make people clearer and stronger, or merely compliant and loud? A leader who says, "Here's what we know, here's what we don't, here's the cost of our path, here's the door if you disagree," is using language as a lantern. A leader who says, "Only a coward would question this," is using language as a club. Both can move a crowd. One builds adults, the other recruits devotees. Adults can love you and still tell you when you're wrong. Devotees love you instead of the truth and will burn it to keep you warm. The art of suggestion wears many costumes. In conversation, it sounds like an open-ended question with a narrow corridor. What will you enjoy most about starting now? In negotiation, it sounds like a range that makes a number feel inevitable. Most people in your position go with this option, as if your position were a rail and not a room. In therapy and coaching, used ethically, suggestion plants seeds of possibility. Notice how your shoulders drop when you imagine saying no, and the body learns a path out of its own tangle. In propaganda, used without consent, suggestion binds identity to slogans that conflate virtue with alignment. Good people stand with X, and suddenly nuance feels like treason. The same structure, different soul. What makes suggestion clean is the presence of choice in the language itself. If you want, consider this. Here are the trade-offs. Speak to your agency. Obviously, everyone knows, this is the only way. Speak to your fear of being left. Tone and phrasing also build traps from politeness. Would you mind just seems small, yet that just is a broom that sweeps the cost under the rug. A quick favor is a spell that shortens your boundary. Real quick teaches your nervous system to skip the part where you evaluate. On the other side, silence can be weaponized as loudly as words. A well-timed pause after your objection invites you to fill it with a compromise. A slow, disappointed exhale says, "You are failing the image I have of you," and you rush to repair what they never said was broken. Even the upward lilt at the end of a sentence, turning a claim into a question, invites co-creation. We're on the same page, right? If you nod, the contract writes itself. The defense is not to fear language but to become fluent in your own. When you feel your body speed up, ask, which word made me run? When you feel your chest warm, ask, which phrase just dressed me in a role? When your mind goes quiet and your head nods on its own, ask, what was assumed for me? Precision unties spells. Instead of arguing with a vague claim, request concrete nouns. Instead of absorbing a frame, lay it next to a second frame and notice which one widens truth without erasing cost. Instead of obeying a suggestion hidden in when, slow it back to if. The moment you restore if, the door reappears. You don't have to walk through it just because someone made the hallway pretty. For those who want to use words without wounding, the path is simple and demanding. Say the thing and include the cost. Use tone to soothe, not to smother. Use framing to clarify, not to corner. Offer suggestions that leave real room for refusal. Invite identity, but never rent it to your idea. Ask more questions than your ego wants to hear. And repeat yourself in two languages at once, the language of the mind and the language of the body. This choice is yours. Here's what it gives. Here's what it takes. Here's time to think. You will lose a few quick wins and gain something better, trust that doesn't need a leash. Con artists, leaders, marketers, each lives and dies by sentences. The difference is whether their sentences make you smaller or stronger. The con artist builds a stage where applause drowns out your doubt. The manipulative leader builds a wall where loyalty is measured by how loudly you shout. The clean marketer builds a bridge where you can see the other side and decide if that's truly your river to cross. And you, listener, reader, citizen, lover, you carry the final instrument, your own narration. Talk to yourself in strong, accurate words. Replace "I must" with "I choose" or "I won't." Replace "I'm bad at this" with "I'm new at this." Replace "this is the only way" with "this is one way." Tiny edits make a life. They are not affirmations floating above reality. They are handles on the furniture of your world so you can move it without breaking your back. Chapter 6: The Power of Silence and Timing. The loudest force in a room is not always the voice that speaks. Sometimes it's the space around the words, the quiet that makes a sentence heavy, the pause that turns a simple truth into a decision. Power doesn't only rise in volume, it gathers in stillness, waits, and lets others reveal themselves. Silence controls conversations because most people fear it. We rush to fill the gap, to prove we are kind or competent or in control, and in that rush we surrender more than we realize: extra details, softer boundaries, cheaper prices, truer feelings. The person who can sit with silence is not empty, they are steady. When you ask a question and then let it breathe, you invite truth to step forward. When you make a statement and stop talking, you give the moment a weight the other person must handle. In that weight, nervous systems show their training. Some will fidget back into old habits, offering concessions to soothe the air. Some will reveal motives they meant to hide because the quiet feels like a mirror asking for honesty. Silence is not a weapon when used with care. It is a level surface that shows you where the floor tilts in other people's minds. The art of waiting is patience turned into quiet dominance. This is not the dominance of humiliation or fear, it is the calm refusal to be rushed off your values. Patience is the discipline of time ownership. When a deadline is thrown at you like a net, you step aside and ask for the real reason behind the hurry. When someone pushes for a yes while your chest is tight, you protect your breath first, because urgency is the most common costume of manipulation. Waiting lets weak offers collapse under their own theater. Waiting lets true opportunities prove they can live without panic. Waiting teaches you that most storms in conversation are weather reports, not the climate. If the offer is good, it will still be good when the adrenaline fades. If the love is real, it will still be here when your nervous system comes home. Nonverbal manipulation sits in the small things, pauses, glances, and presence. A pause can be a kind invitation or a leash. A glance can be a welcome or a warning. Presence can be a blanket or a cage. The difference is intent and clarity. A skilled manipulator uses pauses the way a puppeteer uses strings. They let a silence grow just enough for you to feel responsible for ending it, then reward you with warmth when you end it in their favor. They use glances to rank the room, lingering eye contact for the ally they're grooming, a cool scan for the person they want to shrink. They use proximity to set the price of comfort. Stand too close and your body will agree to things your mind hasn't approved, just to get space back. You will think you compromised, really you bartered relief for terms. But presence can also be medicine. When you choose to be fully present, slow breath, steady eyes, relaxed jaw, you send a signal that there is nothing to chase and nothing to fear. Your calm body is not a trick, it is permission for every nervous system nearby to drop its armor. Silence, used cleanly, is a teacher. It makes room for the truth people are old enough to carry. You do not have to perform wisdom when the quiet can introduce it. In negotiation, silence after your number says, "I respect my value." In apology, silence after "I was wrong" says, "I'm not going to defend my mistake with noise." In love, silence after "I hear you" says, "Your pain does not need to fight mine for a turn." In leadership, silence after the facts lets the room make meaning, instead of cramming them into the meaning you need them to hold. When you trust silence, you stop bullying outcomes. You curate the conditions and let honesty work. Timing is the twin of silence. Words said too early are seeds in winter. Words said too late are bridges after the river has flooded. The power of timing is not mystical, it is sensory. You listen for the moment when the body across from you is able to hear. You feel for the second when your own chest unlocks and the right sentence rises. You notice when a truth is pushing from inside you because you are ready, versus when it is reaching for someone else because you are afraid. That small distinction saves relationships. When you are tempted to deliver a lesson in the middle of someone's pain, you check your timing and offer presence instead. When you are tempted to take a deal because the countdown clock is barking, you check your timing and ask for the math. When you are tempted to explain yourself to a person committed to misunderstanding you, you check your timing and save your breath for someone who treats it like air, not currency. Glances tell stories before words arrive. We are wired to read eyes, and manipulative eyes tell you a script. The quick downward look after you speak can plant insecurity. The prolonged stare can claim territory. The playful squint can sell intimacy it doesn't intend to fund. Counter this not with a glare, but with honest seeing. Look at people long enough to prove you are here, but not so long that you need to own the room. Let your gaze rest on the person speaking and return to neutral spaces when you pause. This is not technique for technique's sake, it's hygiene for attention. Your eyes are the front door to your presence. Leave them open without letting the street own your living room. Pauses are punctuation for the nervous system. A period is a full breath. A comma is a sip of air. A dash invites a thought to connect. If you rush, everything becomes a run-on sentence and the body gets dizzy. Slow the cadence and meaning returns. In conflict, a pause prevents you from lashing out just to fix a feeling you could have soothed by waiting. In sales, a pause lets value echo. In teaching, a pause lets learning catch up to language. In parenting, a pause turns a correction into guidance instead of shame. The person who can pause owns the hour. Not because they control others, but because they control themselves. Presence is what people remember when the words blur. You have met individuals who made a room feel safer by entering it. You have also met those who made a room perform. The difference is their relationship with themselves. If you walk in wanting to prove, your presence will pull attention. If you walk in willing to serve, your presence will steady attention. The body knows. Shoulders drop around the kind of presence that doesn't require applause to exist. You can build that presence by tending to small things. Arrive a little early to let your pulse match the space. Sit or stand with weight in your heels so you are not ready to run. Place your phone out of reach so you do not signal that this moment is competing for you. These tiny rituals are not theatrics, they are anchors. Let's bring this to everyday life. You are offered a deal with "today only" stamped on it. Your chest tightens. Instead of arguing, you say, "I decide tomorrow." Silence. If the offer is theater, the actor will get louder. If it's real, the room will stay calm. A colleague criticizes your work in a crowded meeting with a look that asks you to collapse. You meet their eyes for a count of 2, nod once, and say, "Let's review specifics after." Silence. The room sees you won't fight for status, you will fight for standards. A loved one tries to pull you into an old argument with quick jabs and quick questions. You slow everything down. "I want to talk when we can both hear." Silence. The pattern breaks because the rhythm changed. Power returns to the person who chooses the tempo. If you fear becoming cold by using silence, remember this: silence is not withdrawal, it is respect when it is paired with care. You are not denying connection. You are protecting the conditions where connection can be honest. Your quiet is not a trap, it is a chair you offer so both of you can sit and think. Your timing is not a game, it is the humility to let truth land when it can grow. The power of silence and timing is simple and demanding. It asks you to trust that not speaking can say more, that not moving can move more, that not fixing can fix more than frantic effort. It asks you to believe that your breath is part of the conversation, that your pacing is part of your boundary, that your presence can be a promise. "I will not be rushed into losing myself, and I will not rush you into losing yours." When you live this way, you become the person in the room who turns noise into air. Chapter 7: Gaslighting and Reality Distortion. There is a special kind of cruelty that doesn't bruise the skin but repaints the room. You look around and nothing has moved, yet suddenly you cannot trust your own eyes. That is the wound gaslighting leaves behind, not a broken bone, but a broken compass. Gaslighting is the slow theft of reality. It doesn't always start with a lie, it often begins with doubt. The gaslighter plants a small seed. "Are you sure? I don't remember it that way." You're overreacting, and then waters it with selective facts, strategic forgetfulness, and staged outrage until your memory feels like a traitor. The anatomy is simple and devastating. First, they challenge your perception, then they deny the evidence, then they reinterpret your feelings as flaws. Finally, they offer themselves as the only reliable narrator of your life. The net closes not with force but with repetition. You begin to check their face to know how to feel. You apologize for things you didn't do. You keep a mental spreadsheet of moments you want to bring up and then never do because every conversation leaves you more confused than when you started. You can be brilliant and still get trapped here. Gaslighting does not prey on stupidity, it preys on good faith. Classic patterns look like small storms that keep returning. You describe an event calmly and they respond to the tone you didn't use. You say, "You said you'd be home by 7, and they answer, "Why are you always angry?" You bring evidence and they attack the way you brought it, too soon, too late, wrong place, wrong words, until process becomes the entire trial and the facts starve outside the courtroom. They promise with warmth and then deliver with fog. When you notice the mismatch, they accuse you of never letting things go. They shift time to their advantage. When you recall a promise, they accuse you of living in the past. When they recall a mistake you made, They call it a pattern you refuse to own. They recruit your empathy against you by collapsing into hurt whenever you hold a boundary. They withdraw affection after you raise a concern and flood you with tenderness when you drop it, training your nervous system to prefer silence over honesty. They mirror your language back at you, "You're gaslighting me," to turn the mirror into smoke. After enough cycles, you start collecting screenshots and rehearsing conversations in your head because you know truth will not be enough unless you can stage it like theater. And even then, somehow, it never quite lands. Warning signs are often sensations before they are sentences. Your stomach tightens before you dial their number. You feel the need to record small details of normal days, just in case. You leave conversations exhausted and unsure of what actually happened. You apologize in advance for bringing up basic needs. You keep rewriting texts to make them perfectly calm because anything less than perfect will be used as proof that you are the problem. You start to narrate your own feelings to yourself in a courtroom voice. "I am not angry, I am disappointed," as if clarity alone can keep your reality from being cross-examined. You feel lonely while standing next to them, the kind of loneliness that happens when the person you love treats your perception like a rumor. These are not overreactions, they are alarms. Why does gaslighting work on good people? Because it exploits three beautiful traits: openness, empathy, and the willingness to self-reflect. If you were raised to give people the benefit of the doubt, you will entertain their version longer than is safe. If you were taught to care for other people's feelings, you will soften yours to keep the peace. If you hold yourself to a high standard, you will scan your behavior for flaws and hand your critic a list to use against you. None of these traits are weaknesses, they are strengths without boundaries. Gaslighters don't need you to be naive, they need you to be kind without a lock on your front door. Defensive techniques begin with something that feels small and is enormous, documenting your own reality for yourself. Not to win a fight, but to stay oriented. Keep simple notes: what was said, what was agreed, how it felt, what you decided. When the fog comes, read your notes and let your body return to a day where things were clear. Next, anchor your feelings without needing permission. "I feel uneasy" is not a claim to be proven, it is a state to be honored. Healthy partners will become curious. Gaslighters will become theatrical. Watch who appears. Then, slow the rhythm. Gaslighting depends on speed, fast denials, fast blame shifts, fast inversions of reality. You protect yourself by refusing speed. "I'm not ready to answer. Let me think. We'll come back to this when we're both steady." These sentences do not solve everything, but they make room for you to breathe and hear your own voice again. Language is a shield when used cleanly. Describe behaviors, not character. Instead of "you're manipulative," say, "I hear you denying something you said yesterday. That makes me doubt this conversation." Instead of "you always twist things," say, "the topic keeps changing when I raise this issue. I want to stay with this one point." When they attack your tone, separate content from delivery. We can discuss tone later. First, let's agree on what happened. When they demand proof for your feeling, refuse the trap with gentleness. "My feeling doesn't need proof to be real to me." We can talk about impact and action. When they reverse roles and call your boundary cruelty, repeat your boundary once and stop explaining. Every extra justification is fuel for the next inversion. Your job is not to convince a bad faith listener. Your job is to live in good faith with yourself. Your nervous system needs allies too. Build small rituals that return you to ground. Step outside after hard conversations. Call someone who remembers your laugh. Touch things that do not lie: cold water, sunlight, a page in a book. Gaslighting is a distortion of sense. Your senses are the antidote. Move your body until you feel the solidness of your own weight. Speak your name out loud in an empty room and listen for how steady it sounds. These are not cliches, they are repairs. Confusion shrinks when the body feels safe again. In relationships, set bright lines around reality. If a person denies objective facts, you do not debate, you decide what distance keeps you sane. If they apologize without ownership, "I'm sorry you feel that way," you ask for a repair that names the behavior. Say what you did, not what I felt. If they try to litigate your history every time you set a boundary, you stop time traveling on demand. We're not going back there right now. If they weaponize therapy words, projection, trauma, attachment, to make you the sole problem, you stop accepting diagnoses from the person causing the symptoms. Bright lines are not punishments, they are conditions for reality to remain real. At work, gaslighting often hides inside professionalism. A manager praises you in public and erases your contributions in private. A colleague misquotes instructions and calls your memory dramatic. Meetings become stages where you doubt your notes. Counter with structure. Follow up in writing. Summarize decisions and invite corrections by a specific time. Ask clarifying questions that pin the facts to the calendar. If someone resists clarity, you have met the source of the fog. You may not be able to change them, but you can create a paper trail that keeps you anchored and, if necessary, protects you when the story is retold without you. If you recognize yourself as a survivor of gaslighting, you may carry shame for letting it happen. Release that. You didn't fail to be smart, you succeeded at being human in front of someone who misused your humanity. Healing begins when you hold your younger self with the gentleness they were denied and say, "You were not crazy. You were careful and kind in a crooked room." Over time, the room straightens. You start trusting small perceptions again, a friend's tone, your own fatigue, the relief that follows a true no. Relief is a compass. Follow it. And if you fear becoming hard or cynical, remember, the goal is not to stop trusting, it is to start trusting yourself first. Believe people when they show you consistency. Believe yourself when you feel erosion. Reality is not a debate, it is a home you maintain. Fix the leaks you can. Leave the house if the landlord is the wind. Chapter 8: The Illusion of Choice. Freedom can be a costume. You feel the fabric on your shoulders, you see yourself in the mirror, you spin, and only later do you realize the seams were stitched to guide your steps. That is the paradox at the heart of manipulation. The surest way to control someone is not to take their choices away, but to arrange their choices so carefully that they mistake the path for their will. The illusion of choice begins with a gentle gift, it's up to you. The most effective persuaders don't bark orders, they curate options. They don't say, "Do this." They say, "Which of these two feels best?" Both options lead to the same destination, but you feel the warmth of autonomy and walk more quickly. Controlled freedom feels like respect. It quiets the part of you that resists. In sales, this looks like a basic or premium decision when the only real question is whether the offer fits your life at all. In relationships, it looks like, do you want to talk now or later, when the hidden premise is that the topic will be decided by the person who asked. In power, it looks like ballots with different names and the same donors, or town halls where the questions are chosen in advance and the audience performs democracy while the script performs itself. The move is subtle: reduce the field, inflate the feeling of agency, and let gratitude do the rest. Decision fatigue is the quiet accomplice. Your brain tires of choosing long before your day is done. After enough micro-decisions, messages to answer, notifications to triage, preferences to declare, you become easier to steer. You don't want to analyze, you want to arrive. Manipulators know this. They flood the early steps with variety and the final step with simplicity: 90 colors, 5 shipping speeds, 3 warranties, and then 1 recommended package sitting where your eyes naturally rest. By the time you reach the end, relief chooses for you. Marketers praise your smart decision, as if your nervous system didn't make it to stop the noise. In politics, the tactic is similar: drown you in talking points, graphs, opponent scandals, and urgent headlines until you stop comparing plans and start reaching for the voice that makes the noise feel manageable. In relationships, a partner might bring 10 small issues at once so you'll surrender on the one that matters most just to regain peace. People aren't weak when this works on them, they're human in a world designed to exhaust clarity. Cognitive overload is decision fatigue's louder sibling. It doesn't wear you down slowly, it overwhelms you fast. Con artists use it like a flash grenade, a long, impressive story filled with details you can't verify, credentials you don't have time to check, and a clock that's always running. The point is not to inform you, it is to keep your mind busy so your body says yes. Overload replaces evaluation with escape, and the fastest escape is compliance. In negotiations, overload shows up as thick contracts emailed minutes before a meeting. We'll walk through it together. In family dynamics, it appears as a loved one stacking complaints until you lose the thread and apologize for everything to make the avalanche stop. Control doesn't need truth when it has tempo. Marketing is the most open classroom for this illusion because it teaches you to enjoy it. Choice architecture lives in shelf height, button color, default settings, and social proof badges that tell you, most people chose this. The most becomes a hand on your back. Add a countdown timer and your body writes the story. If many chose this and time is short, I must act. Free trials convert because the default is renewal. Your inaction is quietly counted as a decision to keep paying. Personalization gives you the pleasure of being seen while steering you down a path other people designed. Because you watched, because you liked, a rotation of mirrors keeps you walking while believing the room is yours. The clean versions of these tactics save you time and match you with value. The dirty versions harvest your impulses and call the harvest freedom. Politics carries the illusion with higher stakes and heavier costumes. A referendum offers 3 options, all framed by whoever drafted the question. A debate host asks either-or questions that funnel complex realities into television-sized boxes. A leader declares, we can choose security or chaos, and your nervous system doesn't notice the false frame because safety and fear are primal. Lobbyists write the bill, citizens debate the headline. You are invited to argue about flavors while the recipe is fixed. You still choose, and your choice still matters, but the field is groomed to limit the futures you can imagine. That is the most powerful form of control, not telling you what to think, but teaching you what is thinkable. In personal relationships, the illusion is intimate. A parent says, you can study law or medicine, your choice, and love becomes a narrow corridor painted with pride. A partner offers, we can see your friends next weekend or the weekend after, while quietly deciding that this weekend belongs to their priorities. A friend asks, do you want to call me now or should I come over? When what they mean is, I expect access, and your no becomes impolite inside their curated options. Even apologies can be structured to control. Do you want me to say sorry on the phone or in person? Makes the acceptance of their narrative the only path forward. We don't do this because we're villains. Often we do it because we are afraid of true negotiation, where our needs might be refused and our identity might not be the center. What protects you is not suspicion of every offer. It is the habit of widening the frame before stepping inside it. When presented with 2 choices, ask yourself, what is the third path I'm not being shown? When a countdown clock is barking, ask, who put the clock here and why? When the options all point to the same beneficiary, ask, what would I choose if silence were an option? When a loved one hands you a narrow kindness, pause long enough to see whether acceptance buys a debt you didn't agree to owe. The moment you restore the possibility of no, the magic thins. The moment you add later, the trap of urgency loosens. The moment you ask for terms in writing or put the decision on your calendar instead of theirs, you reclaim a little weather from their climate. There is also a softer skill, choosing your decisions on purpose before the world chooses them for you. If you decide in advance your bedtime, your budget, your boundaries, your values, the default settings of your life serve you instead of whoever reaches you first. You can curate your own choice architecture with rituals that make the right path easier, preparing meals so impulse marketing loses teeth, turning off notifications so outrage can't rend your attention by the hour, scheduling time to think so, I need to decide now, becomes rare. Freedom is not the number of options in front of you, it is the strength of the person doing the choosing. Notice how often peace, not preference, drives your choices when you're tired. Decision fatigue turns harmony into a drug with side effects. The dose is relief now, the rebound is resentment later. To break that cycle, buy yourself small islands of time. I'll give you an answer tomorrow. Send that in writing. Let me check my numbers. These sentences are not attitudes, they are oxygen masks. In family or love, it can sound like, I want to pick from the whole menu, not just the specials. Can we talk about other options? If the relationship is healthy, the menu widens. If it is not, the pushback will reveal the truth you needed to see. Here is the tender twist: you, too, have offered curated choices to people you love. You did it to feel safe. You did it to make life manageable. You did it because a real no scares you. Growing kinder means offering real choices and bearing the true cost of hearing them. It means asking, what do you want, and being ready to adapt or accept difference. It means saying, here's what I want, here's why, and here are other paths if mine doesn't fit you. Influence doesn't have to be a maze. It can be a map with honest landmarks and exits you point to without fear. If you felt manipulated by choices that were never choices, let this be your quiet recovery. You were not gullible, you were hurried, flooded, or hungry. You can slow the tempo. You can drain the flood. You can feed your life with value so you're less likely to eat whatever the world plates. The next time someone hands you two doors, check the hinges. Ask what's behind the wall. Decide whether walking today serves the person you want to be tomorrow. Chapter 9: The Charmer's Mask. Some people don't enter a room, they soften it. Your shoulders drop, your smile arrives before your reasons, and the air feels warmer just because they are standing there. That is the paradox of charm. It looks like kindness, it feels like gravity, and if you are not careful, it becomes a script you follow without ever seeing the stage. Seductive manipulation is not only about beauty or sex, it is the psychology of allure. Allure is attention that feels like a gift. It tells your nervous system, you are seen. The charmer knows this and builds a world where you are the brightest thing in it. They hold eye contact a second longer than strangers do. They say your name as if it is a secret they are honored to keep. They move at a pace that matches yours and then leads by half a step. They laugh in the same places you laugh and tilt their head when you do, sending your body a quiet signal, same, safe. You do not fall for them because you are empty, you fall because they reflect a self you want to believe in, sharper, lighter, chosen. The charmer's mask is made from your hopes. That is why it fits so well. Charm, confidence, and charisma do not argue with your rational mind. They lull it to sleep. Confidence tells your anxious parts to rest, I've got this. Charisma is attention arranged like music, with rhythm and surprise, crescendos of praise and soft landings of humor. It disarms you not by breaking your logic but by feeding your need to feel good in your own skin. Once you feel good around someone, your mind becomes a generous editor. You forgive small red flags as quirks. You call inconsistency mystery and impatience passion. You take their certainty as evidence when it is only volume. You let their timing set the clock inside you. This is not stupidity, it is the ancient biology of belonging. We are wired to trust those who soothe us. We are wired to follow those who make our inner noise quiet down. The charmer knows your body is a better door than your brain. They knock there first. How does tactical seduction disarm rational thought? It starts by reducing friction. Charm simplifies the world into a yes. It removes the pain of choice and replaces it with a story where choosing them is the obvious next chapter. One way it does this is by future pacing, painting scenes where you and they already belong to each other. Imagine us in Rome, they say after the first week, and somehow your mind is walking cobblestone streets, not counting the cost. Another way is speed. Intensity masquerades as intimacy. They share a deep secret early, then collect yours, binding you with the rope of vulnerability before trust has earned the weight. They mirror your values and then use those values as a key. If family is your compass, they adore your mother. If ambition drives you, they call you unstoppable and place themselves in your vision. If service is your language, they become a cause you must not abandon. They praise in public and confide in private, giving you the pleasure of being their exception. When your body purrs at the rhythm, your mind keeps up with a smile. Charm also manages lighting. It knows what to spotlight and what to dim. Flaws are framed as intensity, not possessive, protective, not impulsive, adventurous, not evasive, mysterious. When you question, the charmer leans in, lowers the voice, and says something that sounds like truth because it feels like love. They will say they have never felt this way. They will tell you that you make them better. They will confess to being bad at this, then ask you to teach them how to love right. Your empathy becomes a magnet. You begin to perform the teacher while they perform the eager student. In this posture, critique feels cruel and boundaries feel unromantic. They have not stolen your logic, they have rented it with compliments and paid your attention in the currency of closeness. The invoices come later, in the form of favors, flexibility, and the quiet retirement of parts of your life that do not fit their pace. What separates genuine attraction from tactical seduction is not chemistry, it is character over time. Genuine attraction breathes. It can tolerate a no without punishing you. It can pause without panic. It shows you difference and does not turn difference into a test of loyalty. Real interest is curious, it asks more questions than your ego would ever ask for. Real confidence is not allergic to humility, it can say, "I was wrong," without changing the subject to your tone. Real charisma leaves your nervous system calmer after you part, not emptied out and craving the next hit of attention. Good love is oxygen. Tactical seduction is sugar. Both are sweet. One sustains you. To feel the difference, listen to your body when the lights come up. After you leave them, do you feel more yourself or slightly rearranged? Do you walk away with new energy for your life or a sudden desire to abandon your plans and step into theirs? When you set a small boundary, time to work, time with friends, do they make room, or do they make a performance of loss until you move your line? When you disagree, do they grow larger in order to win or grow quieter in order to understand? The charmer's mask cannot survive the ordinary. It needs the glow of a stage. So, introduce ordinary on purpose. Keep your routines. Stay anchored to your people. Invite them into your life slowly and watch whether the shine becomes steadiness or fades into pressure. Charisma can also be honest. Some people light rooms because their presence comes from a clear center, not from hunger. They are generous with attention because they do not need to harvest yours to exist. They compliment without calculating. They flirt without forecasting a future they are not prepared to build. If they move quickly, they also accept breaks. Their apologies contain nouns. I canceled without warning. I wasted your time. Their promises contain verbs. I'll call at 6. I'll send the plan tonight. Genuine charm doesn't trap, it invites. It brings laughter that doesn't cost you silence. It brings warmth that does not melt your boundaries. You can feel the difference because your self-respect does not shrink to fit their enthusiasm. Here is the tender truth. Many of us wear the charmer's mask sometimes. We turn up the shine in interviews, first dates, or rooms where we fear we are not enough as we are. This isn't evil, it is fear trying to be liked. The work is to notice when the mask stops being a hello and starts being the only face we allow others to see. If you find yourself curating your personality around someone's approval, slow down. Let them meet your edges. Ask for small things and watch what happens. Offer small disappointments and watch what stays. People who want you only when you are dazzling do not want you. They want the way they feel when you perform. If you have been caught by tactical seduction, release the shame. You were not naive, you were open. Your openness is not the problem. Your lack of pace was. Lovers and leaders who charm for control depend on speed and spectacle. You protect yourself by restoring time. I like this, and I move slowly. Tell me that story again when the night is ordinary. Let's make fewer promises and keep them. These are not games, they are tests of whether only real foundations pass them. Charm in leadership deserves its own caution. A charismatic leader can mobilize good people for good causes. They can also make followers out of thinkers by bathing them in significance. We are the ones only we see clearly. Stand with me or stand with chaos. The flattery feels like belonging. The message is a mirror for your best self. But if dissent is framed as betrayal, if expertise is mocked while certainty is worshipped, if the leader needs you to love them more than you love the truth, the mask has taken the office. Keep your mind even when your heart is moved. Keep asking, what is the cost? What is the plan? What is the fallback if this person is not who I want them to be? Love the mission more than the messenger. There is nothing wrong with wanting romance, magic, or a voice that makes the world feel possible. Keep those longings. They make life bright. Just pair them with a promise to yourself, I will not trade my pace for someone else's pose. I will not rent my future to a feeling that cannot survive a Tuesday. I will not call pressure, passion, or neglect freedom. I will remember that love, at its healthiest, wants me to be more of myself, not less. If the charmer's mask has fooled you before, let that be a map, not a scar. You know the path now, the first compliments, the cloud of closeness, the little costs that looked like gifts, the moment you realized you were performing calm to keep the stage lights on. This time, when charm taps your shoulder, turn around with your eyes open. Enjoy the dance. Keep your shoes tied. Chapter 10: Authority and Obedience. The most dangerous orders are the ones we give ourselves after someone in a white coat nods. That is the paradox of authority. It does not always force us, it invites us to borrow its certainty, and we obey because certainty feels like safety. Why do humans naturally obey power? Not because we are helpless, but because we are social. In every storm of history, survival depended on moving together. Movement together needed coordination, and coordination needed a voice to set the tempo. Our nervous system still recognize that voice. The uniform, the badge, the title, the podium, the confident tone, these are shortcuts the body uses to decide who to follow when time is short and stakes feel high. The shortcut is not stupidity, it is efficiency. When an ambulance blares, we do not debate, we pull aside. When a pilot speaks, we listen even if we are tired. Authority, at its best, reduces chaos. But the same reflex that keeps a crowd safe at a fire drill can be used to make a good person do what their private conscience would never choose in daylight. The lever is not fear alone, it is the soothing relief of being told, you don't have to carry this alone. I'll decide. Hierarchy and status shape that relief like clay. In any group, family, office, nation, there are visible ladders and invisible ones. We don't just look up, we look sideways to see how everyone else is responding. If the room treats a person as important, our bodies feel that importance first and justify it later. The dark psychology of hierarchy is simple, status shifts our standards. We forgive more, question less, and accept a narrower field of choices when someone above us speaks with confidence. Titles dress requests as duties. Proximity to power feels like proximity to worth. And so we are tempted to trade a little inner knowing for the borrowed glow of belonging to a strong leader or a prestigious machine. The trade is rarely explicit. It sounds like, just follow the process, or, this is how it's done, or, I'll take responsibility. In that moment, the obedient part of us sighs with relief. The costly part is quieter, the private voice that says, something is off, gets told to wait in the hall while the meeting continues. You can see this tension clearly in a laboratory where the stakes felt fake but the emotions were real. A volunteer arrives, is told by a calm experimenter in a lab coat to administer increasing shocks to another person for wrong answers. The shocks are not real, but the screams sound real. The volunteer hesitates, looks to the authority figure, and hears, the experiment requires that you continue. Many continue past the point their own faces show distress. They are not monsters. They are ordinary people caught between two loyalties, the loyalty to their inner alarm and the loyalty to the structure they agreed to enter. The white coat, the clipboard, the scripted prompts, please continue, it is essential you continue, you have no other choice, combine with a staged setting to create a story, you are doing something important, and the discomfort you feel is part of the work. In that story, obedience dresses as virtue. The hidden compliance instinct is not about cruelty, it is about needing to be good in a system that defines good as doing what you are told. The experiment is famous because it is not rare. The same pattern repeats in offices where people sign off on harmful policies because legal approved it. It repeats in hospitals when overworked staff follow a protocol they privately doubt because a senior insists. It repeats in families where a dominant parent tells the others what reality is and everyone else adjusts their feelings to fit. Authority provides cover, and we are tempted to live underneath it because responsibility is heavy. The darker move is diffusion. When everyone is responsible, no one feels responsible. The system decided, we say, as if systems were alive. This is how 1,000 small obediences become large harms. So what keeps us obedient even when our stomach tightens? Structures that make disobedience feel like betrayal. Uniforms and titles are symbols, but the deeper glue is rhythm and identity. This is how our team wins. This is what professionals do. This is how we show respect. Add urgency, we don't have time, and scarcity, opportunities like this are rare, and the nervous system folds. We are not just obeying orders, we are protecting our place in the tribe. We fear that a no will exile us from the warmth of belonging, so we press yes and tell our conscience we'll talk later. Later rarely arrives. And yet, authority is not the enemy. We need leaders. We need experts. We need structure. The question is, how do we keep authority from becoming a tunnel that narrows our moral sight? The first answer lives in the body. Obedience speeds you up, integrity slows you down. When a request arrives from above and your heart rate pops, practice a pause. Name the feeling, pressure, confusion, dread. The moment you can name it, you have re-entered the room with yourself. The second answer lives in language. Replace I have to with I choose to or I won't. This tiny edit returns agency. If you still choose to comply, you do it eyes open. If you choose to refuse, you hear your own voice say it and it strengthens you for the next time. The third answer lives in questions. Ask for specifics. What are the risks? Who is accountable? What happens if we don't? Good authority will make space for those questions. Corrupt authority will punish them or change the subject to your attitude. The response teaches you who you're dealing with. Status also loses its spell when you move closer to the ground truth. In a hospital, that's the patient. In a company, it might be the customer or the numbers that don't care about slogans. In a family, it is the well-being of the youngest or most vulnerable. When you align with ground truth, hierarchy has less power to seduce you. You stop seeing rank as virtue and start seeing outcomes as the only honest report. The lab coat becomes fabric again. Sometimes the bravest disobedience is small. You tell the meeting, I'm not comfortable signing my name to this. You tell the supervisor, that instruction conflicts with policy, I need it in writing. You tell a parent, I love you, and I'm not accepting that version of events. You tell a partner, you don't get to be the narrator of my feelings. These sentences do not make you reckless. They make you visible to yourself. Authority can still disagree with you, but it has to step into the daylight to do it. Many manipulative structures rely on soft acquiescence. Once the light is on, they soften, stall, or retreat, not because you won, but because the magic trick needed dimness. For leaders listening, the mirror faces you too. Your authority is clean when it can tolerate dissent, when it names trade-offs, when it shares credit and carries blame, when it creates safety for the smallest voice in the room to be heard without paying a social tax. Your authority turns dark when loyalty to you matters more than loyalty to the truth, when speed matters more than accuracy and dignity, when, because I said so, becomes the standard instead of the emergency exception. The strongest teams follow you not because they must, but because your presence makes their best selves easier to access. That is the right magic. In everyday life, obedience often hides in politeness. We say yes to avoid awkwardness. We say no problem when there is a problem. We let titles decide how much of ourselves we bring to a room. If you want to grow out of this without becoming combative, practice gentle clarity. I'll need time to think. I can't do that, but I can do this. I respect your role, I'm still not persuaded. Politeness keeps the door open. Clarity keeps your feet from being dragged through it. Perhaps the most important lesson is forgiveness, for yourself. If you've obeyed when you wish you hadn't, do not turn the memory into a whip. Use it as a compass. Ask, what did authority offer me that I needed? Maybe it offered certainty, belonging, speed, or protection from blame. Then build that need into your life in honest ways so you are less likely to rent it from someone else at a moral cost. The person who supplies their own clarity, community, and courage is still influenced by authority, but not owned by it. Chapter 11: Social Engineering and Group Manipulation. A single whisper in a quiet room can be ignored. The same whisper repeated by 1,000 mouths becomes a law inside your head. That is the terrifying beauty of group influence. We don't just hear the crowd, we borrow its certainty and call it our own. Social engineering is the craft of shaping behavior by shaping environments, incentives, and stories so that groups move as if they chose it together. The manipulator does not need to win every mind, they only need to set a current strong enough that the undecided drift with it and the tired surrender to it. Control a few levers: who speaks first, what gets repeated, what gets rewarded, what gets punished, and you can conduct an orchestra of strangers who swear they are improvising. It begins small. A room is arranged so all chairs face the same direction. Questions are collected but only some are read. A handful of confident voices praise the plan and doubt becomes impolite. Soon people start nodding at ideas they haven't had time to weigh, because humans are social long before they are rational. We take cues from faces to know what is safe to feel. When enough faces agree, our nervous system relaxes and our standards soften. Agreement becomes evidence, repetition becomes truth, volume becomes virtue. The crowd mind is not stupidity, it is a survival strategy that can be hijacked. Conformity lowers the cost of being human. We copy to conserve energy, to avoid conflict, to stay inside the firelight. In a crisis, this reflex saves lives. In a manipulated environment, it builds cages. The mob mentality is a different animal: faster breath, shorter sentences, fewer ifs. Individuals inside become braver and crueler than they would be alone because responsibility diffuses and identity merges. The chant thinks for you. The rhythm forgives you. The part of your brain that checks for nuance is drowned by the drum that says, "We are right," and the fear that says, "Do not be the one who breaks the rhythm." Mass persuasion exploits the same circuits with nicer clothes. The slogan becomes a shortcut. The logo becomes a tribe. The algorithm learns which feelings make you stay and then learns to show them to you first, until your feed is a funhouse mirror that insists, "Most people think like you." Once your world is arranged that way, disagreement feels like madness and complexity feels like betrayal. Propaganda is a strong word for a simple sequence: simplify, repeat, divide, reward. Simplify by turning a messy reality into a single picture with 2 colors. Repeat until the picture feels familiar enough to be safe. Divide by giving people a villain to blame and a halo to wear. Reward with belonging, likes, applause, access, and the narcotic relief of certainty. You can watch this sequence in old newsreels and in new comment sections. The tone changes with the time, but the structure barely moves. The genius of modern propaganda is its intimacy. It no longer shouts only from a stage, it whispers from your pocket, optimized by math to give you the next taste of the feeling that kept you scrolling yesterday. It does not need to convince everyone, it needs to keep enough of us separated from each other by carefully curated outrage so that the center never holds long enough to ask better questions. Cult dynamics take these tools and build a total environment. They start with love and clarity. You are special. We see you. Here is the map. Then they tighten. The leader becomes the lens through which all meaning must pass. Doubt is rebranded as disloyalty. Outsiders are recast as threats. Language is edited so that ordinary words carry the group's definitions and common sense cannot find a foothold. Isolation wears many outfits: a compound, a private chat, a schedule so packed that you never have time to hear your own thoughts without the group's echo. Punishment is often soft at first: disapproval, less access, fewer smiles, before it becomes harder. The final trick is to make departure feel like death. If you leave, you will be alone, you will be lost, you will be evil. And yet the people inside are often generous, wounded, searching. They are not fools, they are human beings who found a place where their longing was organized and their questions were answered too quickly. Modern media multiplies these forces with speed. The platform's goal is not to tell the truth, it is to hold attention. Truth is welcome when it performs. The incentives reward heat over light, certainty over curiosity, spectacle over substance. A story that flatters your tribe will travel farther than a study that challenges it. A clip that humiliates an opponent will be shared more than a clip that humanizes them. The interface is a behavioral lab running all day, watching which buttons make your thumb hesitate and which headlines make your jaw clench. This is not a conspiracy, it is capitalism applied to attention. But the effect is political and personal, a population emotionally trained to react before thinking, to perform before listening, to feel surrounded by enemies while being surrounded by mirrors. How do manipulators move entire groups and societies? They seed a frame that makes one path feel inevitable. They pick an origin story and an apocalypse, where we come from and what will destroy us if we don't act. They elevate a few exemplars to model desired behavior and a few traitors to model the price of dissent. They design rituals, chants, hashtags, weekly meetings, shared fasts, that synchronize bodies so minds will follow. They place signs in the environment that make compliance automatic: badges, banners, slogans at eye level, default choices that do the deciding for you. They court the arbiters of status, celebrities, credentialed experts, popular creators, because once status endorses a message, the social tax for questioning it rises. Finally, they control tempo. Too fast for thought, too slow for urgency, always just enough pressure that relief looks like obedience. But just as crowds can be steered into harm, they can be invited into wisdom. The antidote to mass manipulation is not loneliness, it is better group norms. Groups that are hard to control have a few shared habits. They normalize questions by rewarding them. They slow down decisions that carry human cost. They diversify their status signals so that not only the loud are honored. They publish their methods, not just their conclusions. They practice the art of steelmaning, stating the opponent's strongest case fairly before responding. They admit when incentives are pulling them and adjust the incentives instead of pretending to be immune. Above all, they train members to keep a private life of the mind, to read outside the tribe, to spend time offline, to anchor identity in values that are larger than the next viral storm. On the individual level, protection begins in the body and ends in the calendar. Notice when your breath shortens while you scroll, that is your nervous system telling you someone else has the wheel. Put the device down. Touch the world. When a chant rises around you, literal or digital, ask the question that restores your edges: what evidence would change my mind? If the answer is nothing, you found a faith, not a conclusion. When an invitation arrives soaked in urgency and belonging, buy yourself time, I'll decide tomorrow. If tomorrow is too late, the offer is theater. When an algorithm serves you your own reflection, interrupt the mirror. Go looking for the smartest disagreement, not the loudest enemy. The goal is not to be neutral about everything, it is to be free enough to choose your loyalties with eyes open. If you have been swept by a crowd into saying or doing things you regret, let gentleness begin your repair. Shame hardens into defensiveness, curiosity softens into growth. Ask, what need did that group meet for me? What fear did that story soothe? Find or build communities that meet the same need without the same cost, places where belonging does not require blindness, where conviction is paired with humility, where leaders tell the truth about trade-offs and step down when power becomes a mask. Social engineering will always exist because we are creatures of each other. The question is whether we become instruments played by anyone who learns our notes, or musicians who can join an orchestra without losing our own melody. You are not just a node in a network, you are a person with a conscience that can be trained to stay awake even when the room starts to sing. Chapter 12: Digital Manipulation in the Modern Age. Your phone doesn't shout to control you, it whispers your name with perfect timing. The scariest cage isn't locked from the outside, it's lined with pleasures that make you forget the door. That is the modern trick. The machine doesn't force your attention, it trains it to come willingly. Digital manipulation begins with something you already want: connection, novelty, affirmation, a little spark of possibility at the end of a long day. Social media and digital marketing wrap those wants in psychology and feed them back to you in a rhythm designed to keep your thumb moving. Every element is a nudge. The endless scroll removes the friction of reaching an end. Your brain's completion meter never dings, so you keep searching for it. Notifications are intermittent rewards, sometimes nothing, sometimes something electric, and the uncertainty itself is addictive. Red badges borrow the color of urgency from the fire alarm in your nervous system. Streak counters convert friendship into a scoreboard so you will serve the platform to protect the bond. Typing indicators prime your anticipation. Seen receipts weaponize politeness. Even the micro-delays of a loading spinner are crafted drama, just enough waiting to build the smallest suspense, the smallest relief, and suddenly you're not checking information, you're chasing feelings on schedule. Digital marketers ride the same currents with cleaner clothes. They don't just tell you what a product does, they tell you who you'll be with it. They frame prices as per day, so your body compares it to coffee instead of rent. They put the recommended plan in the middle, the button where your thumb rests naturally, the trial with the default renewal you'll forget to cancel, the social proof badge that says, most people chose this. Most becomes a hand at your back. Emergencies are staged with countdown clocks. Scarcity is theater. Personalization studies what made you linger yesterday and offers you a kinder echo today. None of this proves bad intent, it proves that attention is a market, and you are both the buyer and the product, paying with seconds you won't get back. Then there is the algorithm, a tireless psychologist without a conscience. It doesn't know you, it predicts you. It watches how long you pause on a face, which words pull your eyes, what sound makes your thumb hesitate, which emotions increase session length. It doesn't care if a clip makes you angry or inspired, only that it keeps you. Over time it builds a private weather system around you. If outrage extends your visit, more storms arrive. If envy extends it, more perfect lives slide past. If fear extends it, more alarms parade through your feet until you live inside a siren. The algorithm's goal is not truth or community or meaning. Its goal is engagement, and engagement is often easiest to purchase with your most reactive feelings. The result is a personalized funhouse, every mirror flattering or frightening you just enough to keep you leaning closer. The harm here is subtle because it often feels like pleasure. You think you're relaxing, you're actually practicing being steered. You think you're catching up with friends, you're being trained to outsource boredom, grief, and wonder to a rectangle. You think you're choosing, you're responding to defaults chosen for you by people rewarded for time on platform. Digital life doesn't have to be a trap, but it becomes one when the platform's incentives quietly replace your own. The cost is not only hours, it's sovereignty over what you pay attention to, the most valuable thing you own. How do you stay aware while living in this age without becoming cynical or hermit-like? Begin with the body. Your nervous system is an early warning system more honest than your justifications. Notice your breath while you scroll. If it shortens, you're being led. Notice your jaw when you read that headline. If it tightens, you've been hooked. Notice your posture when the notification arrives. If your shoulders jump, your autonomy just shrank. Awareness is not a lecture, it is sensation labeled in real time. This is adrenaline. This is comparison. This is fear of missing out. The moment you name it, a small space opens. Inside that space, you can choose. Then reclaim pace. Algorithms win by speed, you win by rhythm. Move your digital life from pole to pole with pauses. Turn off non-essential notifications, the ones that turn other people's schedules into your emergencies. Remove platforms from your home screen so your thumb stops arriving on autopilot. Decide when you check, not if you check. Set a gentle timer not to punish yourself, but to invite a reset before you start drowning in the feed. Curate your follows like you curate your food. If a creator reliably leaves you anxious, angry, or small, unfollow not as a denial of reality but as a defense of sanity. Replace doom habits with ritual, morning long-form reading before short-form skimming, evening stretches before evening scrolls, a walk when your fingers itch for the app. Boredom is not an enemy, it is the doorway to original thought the platforms cannot sell you. Now protect your sense-making. The machine thrives on fragments, you thrive on context. Before you share, ask, what is the original source? Before you believe, ask, what evidence would change my mind? If the answer is nothing, you aren't informing yourself, you're defending a team jersey. Cross the streams on purpose, find one smart voice you disagree with and read them weekly so your mental muscles don't atrophy into certainty. When a post pushes you to react fast, steal 5 minutes from it. If it's true now, it will be true in 5 minutes. Almost nothing important dies in the time it takes to breathe. Digital manipulation also loves loneliness. It sells you the performance of connection instead of the practice of it. Texts are not hugs. Likes are not listening. DMs can't smell the coffee on your friend's breath. Counter the machine with bodies. Plan calls without screens. Invite people to walk. Eat with your phone in another room and relearn the shape of your own attention when it isn't rented by an app. Build small offline refuges, books, notebooks, instruments, prayers, silence, old technologies that return your mind to its own voice. For creators, marketers, and leaders, integrity online is a quiet revolution. You can use psychology to help, not to harvest. Offer hooks that are true to the value you deliver. Tell the cost as well as the benefit. Respect the resist panic clocks when urgency is theater. Measure success not only by views, but by outcomes in people's lives. If the tactic requires hiding the terms, the tactic will eat your brand from the inside. Audiences can feel when you see them as human instead of heat map. In your own feed, practice a sovereign language. Replace, I have to reply, with, I choose to reply later. Replace, the algorithm hates me, with, I won't bend my soul to a machine. Replace, I'm wasting time, with, I'm learning how to direct time. Curiosity grows where shame once sat. And when you fall into the scroll anyway, forgive yourself quickly. Guilt is a sticky app, too. Close it. Return to breath. Return to choice. Remember that the algorithm is not a villain living under your bed. It is a mirror of our incentives. When we reward fury, we get more fury. When we reward nuance, we get a little more light. Your clicks and pauses are votes. Cast them like a citizen of your own mind. Train your feeds the way you would train a garden, pull weeds, plant slow-growing things, welcome bees. If it doesn't bloom you, compost it. Some days you'll still lose to the machine. That's all right. What matters is the drift over months, more reading than raging, more making than scrolling, more conversations that end with relief instead of residue. Anchor your identity somewhere the algorithm cannot index, in values, craft, service, faith, family, the quiet friendships that don't need a photo to be real. The strongest firewall is a life that tastes better than the feed. Chapter 13, Emotional Anchoring and Conditioning. We don't fall in love only with people, we fall in love with patterns. Give the heart the same feeling at the same time, in the same way, and it will start to wait for it like sunrise. Take that feeling away, and the body will search the horizon as if the world has ended. That is the quiet law behind emotional anchoring. Repetition turns a moment into meaning, and meaning turns into dependence. Emotional anchoring starts small, almost innocent. A certain tone paired with reassurance, a certain scent paired with safety, a certain text tone paired with attention. The nervous system is a brilliant archivist. It links feelings to cues so we can move faster next time. The smell of rain in childhood, the sound of a door in home, the weight of a hand and trust. Anchors are how we remember with our skin. In healthy love, anchors become rituals, a nightly check-in that says, "We're here," a weekend coffee that says, "We still choose this," a phrase that turns arguments into a chance to reconnect. But the same mechanism that stitches couples together can be stitched by manipulators to bind you to them. If a person gives you a burst of warmth every time you obey and a small chill every time you resist, your body will do the math before your mind can. It will drift toward warmth and call it love. When the anchors are placed carefully, praise after compliance, silence after boundary, affection as a reward, distance as a lesson, you begin to feel relief as proof of rightness and anxiety as proof you must fix yourself. They don't need to tell you what to do, they need only to teach your feelings where to stand. Conditioning is the rhythm beneath those anchors. Reward-punishment cycles train animals, children, customers, voters, employees, lovers, anyone with a nervous system, which is to say, all of us. The clean version is how we learn to drive or to play an instrument. Feedback creates skill. The dark version is how control learns to live rent-free in your chest. Continuous rewards are nice but forgettable. Intermittent rewards are unforgettable. When approval arrives sometimes after you comply and sometimes for no clear reason, your attention becomes a gambler. It waits for the lever to pay out. You check the phone more often. You do one more favor. You smooth your edges to keep the machine glowing. Then comes the punishment, rarely direct, often deniable. A missed call that used to be answered. A colder text. A joke at your expense. The message is felt more than spoken. When you are easy, love is easy. When you are firm, love is scarce. Over time, the nervous system stops asking, "Is this fair?" and starts asking, "How do I get back to the good part?" You are not weak when this works on you. You are human living inside a casino with velvet walls. Addiction isn't only about chemicals, it is about cycles that promise relief and deliver residue. The psychological blueprint of addiction, cue, craving, response, reward, maps onto unhealthy loyalty with eerie precision. The cue can be a notification, a sigh, a certain look. The craving is the itch for reassurance, status, closeness, permission to feel safe again. The response is the thing you do to get it: agree, buy, apologize, laugh at something that isn't funny, shrink one more inch. The reward is that small, exquisite hit of belonging. For a little while, the world exhales. Then the drop. The high fades and the ledger opens again, asking for another payment. Loyalty built this way is sticky not because it is deep, but because it is constantly being threatened with withdrawal. Your devotion is measured by how quickly you return to baseline when they snap the invisible fingers. You wonder why you keep going back. The answer is not a flaw in your character, it is a loop in your body being expertly played. Manipulators understand that anchoring works best when it drafts your own values. If you prize kindness, the reward is praise for being so compassionate, and the punishment is a disappointed, "I thought you of all people would understand." If you prize loyalty, the reward is, "No one has ever stood by me like you," and the punishment is, "I can't count on you like I hoped." If you prize excellence, the reward is, "You're the only one I trust with this," and the punishment is a subtle comparison to someone who just gets it. In each case, your goodness is recruited as a lever. You start chasing confirmation that you are who you want to be in the eyes of someone who sets the price. They don't have to be cruel. They just have to be consistent enough that relief feels moral and distance feels like failure. Even places and times can be turned into anchors. Sunday evening becomes apology hour. Payday becomes borrow just this once. The end of a fight becomes let's never bring this up again, which sounds like peace and functions like amnesia. A particular restaurant becomes our spot, so declining an invitation to meet there feels like refusing the relationship, not the meal. In marketing, launch day is a drumbeat of scarcity that trains you to feel that missing out is a character flaw. In politics, the national anthem paired with a policy turns dissent into disrespect. In workplaces, all-hands meetings close with a ritual chant of values while the week quietly contradicts them. Anchors are powerful because they are invisible once installed. You stop noticing the link, you only feel the tug. There is a softer side to all this, the side worth saving. Healthy anchoring can heal the same places manipulation harms. A parent can pair feedback with warmth so a child learns that mistakes are survivable. A couple can pair conflict with repair so the body learns that love doesn't vanish when voices rise. Friends can pair honesty with presence so truth stops feeling like loss. When the pattern is we return, anchors become safety lines instead of leashes. The difference is consent and clarity. Ethical conditioning says what it's doing out loud. It names the reward, it owns the consequence, it invites choice, and it does not convert refusal into moral failure. If you are listening and recognizing your own loops, take a breath without shaming yourself. You did not fall for something simple, you adapted to something sophisticated. Start by naming the anchors. Name the cue that wakes your craving. Name the moment your stomach drops. Name the exact sentence that makes you reach for your wallet or your apology or your overnight bag. Naming is not a poem here, it is a pair of scissors. Once you see the string, you can decide whether to cut it, loosen it, or hold it differently. Then change the rhythm. If the other person's pattern is fast, become slow. If their pattern is unpredictable, introduce predictability to your side of the street. I'll answer tomorrow, I need this in writing, I won't discuss this after 10 p.m. Your nervous system will protest at first, the body is loyal to habit, but the protests are the sound of your anchors being moved back into your hands. The next move is self-generated reward. When the cycle relies on someone else to grant you relief, build other sources of relief that arrive on schedule and don't negotiate your worth. Call the friend who never invoices love. Keep the promises you make to your own body, sleep, food, sun, so you're less tempted to eat scraps of attention. Create small rituals that tether you to yourself, a 5-minute journal after hard conversations, a short walk instead of a long argument, a sentence you say aloud that reminds you, my value is not a tip I earn. The more you become a reliable giver to yourself, the less rentable you are. If you are the one who has used anchors and conditioning to keep people close, let this be the gentle turning point. You were probably scared. You learned that distance felt like danger, so you trained others never to create it. You can unlearn the theater of reward and punishment. Say what you want, and accept the answer. If closeness fades when you don't get your way, it wasn't closeness, it was control dressed in affection. Trade intermittent intensity for steady care. It is less glamorous and more real. In the end, loyalty is beautiful when it grows from freedom. The most faithful partner is the one who could leave and chooses not to, not the one who stays because the schedule of your affection has turned into oxygen. The most trustworthy customer is the one who knows your product and returns because it works, not because you've gamified their habits until quitting feels like exile. The most resilient citizen is the one who can love a country and still question it, not the one conditioned to hear criticism as treason. Anchors that hold us upright are worth keeping. Anchors that keep us underwater must be cut. Chapter 14: The Manipulator's Mindset. The most unsettling truth about manipulation is this: it doesn't always come from monsters. It often comes from people who learned early that power is oxygen and control is a coat against cold. If you can understand that hunger without excusing the harm it causes, you'll stop being surprised by the mask and start seeing the face that wears it. Step inside the mind of a manipulator and you'll find a compass that points to advantage the way yours points to meaning. Where you might ask, what is right, they ask, what works. Their questions are pragmatic, even elegant in their simplicity. What moves this person? What blocks them? What will cost me least and pay me most? They do not necessarily wake up plotting, many wake up measuring. They scan the room for leverage the way a musician scans for tempo, who craves approval, who fears conflict, who needs to rescue, who hates to be alone. They listen, not to be close, but to collect stories, tells, little levers they can pull later with 2 fingers and a smile. To them, emotions are data points, boundaries are puzzles, conscience is a variable to account for in the plan. Their advantage is patience. They can hold a pose longer than most people can hold a breath. They can say nothing until the silence makes you explain yourself into a corner. They can compliment you with surgical precision and wait for your gratitude to turn into permission. What drives them? Sometimes pain. Sometimes a learned lesson that the world only loves the winner. Sometimes the intoxicating clarity of strategy in a messy life. Often, beneath the calm, a simple equation, control equals safety. If I can anticipate you, I won't be abandoned. If I can steer you, I won't be humiliated. If I can keep you guessing, I'll never be the one surprised. Their kindness can be real, but it is rarely free. It's an investment with expected returns. They may not see themselves as cruel. They may see themselves as efficient, as necessary in a naive world, as the only adult in a room full of trusting children. And when they are very good, they do not raise their voice. They raise your hope. You walk where they wanted you to go and thank them for the view. Machiavellian traits sit at the managerial center of this mindset. Think of the Machiavellian as a strategist whose favorite tool is the map, not the sword. They value outcomes over optics, structure over sentiment, timing over talk. They practice the long game, small favors now for large favors later, alliances built like scaffolding, reputations kept just clean enough to survive dirty work. They can be generous with credit when it costs them nothing and brilliantly ruthless when the stakes rise. They do not waste energy on moral theater. They calculate risks and frame choices so that other people conclude, on their own, that the Machiavellian's plan is the only reasonable path. If you block them, they do not scream. They pivot. They court your rival. They reframe the argument until you find yourself defending their interest to prove your own integrity. At their best, these traits can stabilize a crisis. At their worst, they turn human beings into pieces on a board. Narcissistic traits are different. They pull gravity toward the self. The narcissistic personality is organized around a mirror that must never crack. Admiration is air, criticism is poison. Charm becomes a life support machine, big entrances, bright promises, compliments as confetti. They idealize quickly, you're the only one who gets me, and devalue just as quickly when you fail to feed the image they need to see. Empathy is present when it performs, it disappears when your pain competes with their reflection. Their memory is selective in the service of the story where they are center, hero, and victim by turns. Accountability feels like annihilation, so they swap it for projection. Your boundary becomes abandonment, your feedback becomes abuse, your reasonable pace becomes lack of support. The tragedy is that the admiration never fills them. They are thirsty in a rainstorm, and everyone near them is asked to tilt the clouds. Psychopathic traits live at the far end of detachment, coolness under pressure that can look like leadership until it doesn't. Here, emotional signals register dimly or not at all. Rules are interesting only as obstacles. Guilt is a rumor. Fear is a calculation. The psychopathic style watches other people's tears with curiosity, not contagion. Where the narcissistic person needs your awe, the psychopathic person needs your utility. They can mimic warmth like a second language learned by an excellent student. They can make eye contact that looks deep and says nothing. They can tell the story you need to hear without any of the tremor real feeling gives a voice. They are dangerous not because they are theatrical, but because they are efficient, risk-seeking, punishment-resistant, bored by ordinary costs, and untroubled by the sleeplessness that follows harm in most of us. Some use these traits to cut through panic in tight places. Others use them to cut through people. Threading through all of these styles is emotional detachment and strategic empathy. Emotional detachment is the ability, or the habit, of standing outside feeling as if it were someone else's weather. It gives a manipulator two advantages: they don't drown in the storm, and they can study the people who do. Strategic empathy is their umbrella. It is not the shared ache of your pain, it is the accurate reading of your pain's leverage. They know when to soften their gaze, when to share a wound that rhymes with yours, when to say just enough of the right word to open the right door. This can be a superpower in clean hands: therapists, negotiators, leaders who steady us without stealing us. In unclean hands, it's a skeleton key. The difference is motive and consent. If the empathy ends as soon as you say no, it was strategy wearing kindness like a borrowed coat. Inside the manipulator's mind, language is a toolkit. Words are placed to move you, not to reveal them. We replaces I when they want to erase your edge. I'm confused replaces I disagree to make you carry the burden of explanation. After everything I've done replaces I want something to invoice your conscience. They do not lie all the time, they lie precisely, often by omission, often by letting your hope fill in the blanks. They apologize without nouns, sorry for what happened, so nothing sticks. They promise with verbs that never find a calendar, I'll make it up to you, so the debt stays open. They do not need you to forget, they need you to remember the story in the version that keeps them in the hero's seat. Power, for them, is not only control over outcomes, it is control over definitions. If they can define loyalty as silence, honesty as cruelty, boundaries as selfishness, love as sacrifice, then you will police yourself on their behalf. This is why the manipulator's world is full of rebranded words. They call pressure passion, secrecy privacy, entitlement standards. They call your fatigue moodiness, your clarity stubbornness, your request for time drama. When you start using their vocabulary, you start living in their map. And yet, here is the hard compassion: some manipulators did not wake up wanting to be this way. Many were trained by chaotic homes, by early humiliations, by systems that rewarded mask and punished need. Some learned that feeling deeply would sink them, so they learned to float above feeling and to pull others into their raft. Understanding this does not mean staying on the raft. It means you can step off without hating the swimmer. You can say, I see how this kept you safe once. It will not be the way I live. How do you keep your center around such minds without becoming cruel or naive? You start by believing behavior over story. When charm and harm conflict, let the harm carry more weight. When apologies arrive without change, upgrade your definition of apology to include change. When you are praised for agreeing and punished for thinking, translate the praise as instruction and the punishment as a map. Then adjust your distance. Manipulators lose power when the costs of access rise. In writing, please. I need a day. I won't discuss this if you raise your voice. These are not punishments. They are prices of admission to your life. Inside yourself, practice the opposite of their mindset: slow truth. Ask, what do I want that I am afraid to say? Say it gently anyway. Ask, what do I fear will happen if I hold this boundary? Let the fear speak and hold your line anyway. Ask, where am I tempted to nudge instead of ask? Ask instead. Strategic empathy used ethically feels like care because it includes the freedom to decline. Emotional detachment used ethically feels like steadiness because it refuses to punish emotion in others. You can keep these tools and clean them. Influence is not theft when consent is real and costs are named. If you see yourself in any of these darker traits, let that recognition be the beginning of mastery, not a sentence. You are not your reflexes, you are their steward. You can retire tactics that buy closeness at the price of trust. You can replace the thrill of the win with the quiet pride of a clean process. You can learn to let people disappoint you without teaching them a lesson they didn't agree to learn. You can practice a power that doesn't need an audience to be real. And if you have been living under someone else's mindset, collecting your second guesses like bruises, take this as permission to reset your map. You don't need a courtroom to reclaim your reality. You need small, consistent refusals to rent your soul, fewer explanations, more decisions, fewer rehearsed defenses, more simple no's, fewer debates about definitions, more life aligned with yours. The manipulator's genius is turning your attention into their tool. Your genius is turning your attention back toward the life you mean to live. Chapter 15: Ethical Manipulation and Strategic Influence. Power becomes dangerous when it needs to hide. It becomes healing when it can tell the truth about what it wants. Here is the paradox we must hold like fire and water in the same hands. The tools that bend people can also lift them, and the difference is not the tool, it is the terms. There is a fine line between influence and exploitation, and you can feel it before you can define it. Exploitation shrinks you to fit a plan, influence expands you to meet a possibility. Exploitation hides its bill, influence presents its invoice with daylight and lets you decide. Exploitation converts your hopes into leverage, influence treats your hopes as sacred and asks permission at each turn. The behaviors can look similar from far away: clear language, confident tone, careful timing, and understanding of what moves the heart, but the soul inside the move is different. Unethical persuasion needs your confusion. Ethical persuasion needs your consent. Unethical persuasion uses your feelings to overrule your thinking. Ethical persuasion invites your thinking to guide your feelings back home. This is not moral theater, it is practical engineering for trust. Imagine two conversations offering the same action. In the first, the voice hurries you. Everyone's doing this. The window is closing. It's obvious. You notice your chest tighten, your time collapse, your fear of being left behind stir. In the second, the voice slows you. Here's what this gives and what it costs. Here's who this helps and who it doesn't. Here's the door if you want out, and here's the path if you want in. You notice your shoulders drop, your questions multiply, your dignity remain intact. The first aims for compliance. The second aims for clarity. Compliance feels like relief with a hangover. Clarity feels like steadiness that lasts until morning. Ethical influence is simply the craft of building that steadiness on purpose. How can persuasion be used for good without becoming a sermon? Start with the human, not the outcome. To lead someone toward health, learning, safety, reconciliation, or growth, you still use framing, timing, momentum, and story, only now you align those elements with the person's long-term values and agency. A therapist might frame a hard truth inside a larger story of competence: you survived worse, you can face this, and time the intervention for the minute a client's nervous system can bear it. A teacher might stack small wins to make a frightening subject feel friendly so curiosity can do its work. A doctor might present options in plain language and ask, "What matters most to you?" before recommending a course. A parent might pace a boundary with warmth, "I love you," and the answer is no, so the child learns that love and limit can live together. A leader might share bad news without spin, then honor the intelligence of the room by asking for better ideas than their own. The common thread is respect that does not perform itself, it organizes itself into the architecture of the moment. Sometimes ethical influence looks like removing persuasion. Choosing not to use a lever you could pull is its own kind of power. You could press the guilt button, but you don't. You could stage urgency, but you won't. You could make someone smaller to make your plan cleaner, but you refuse. This restraint is not weakness, it is design. It builds people who can walk without a leash. And those people, clients, students, lovers, teammates, become your truest advocates because their yes is theirs. In a world addicted to fast compliance, choosing slow consent feels radical. It also lasts. The engine that lets you walk this line is emotional intelligence, first as shield, then as sword. As a shield, emotional intelligence protects you from being used. You notice the cues your body gives when a tactic is in the room, the tight breath of manufactured urgency, the sinking stomach of hidden invoices, the post-conversation fog of having been steered without a map. You learn to pause between stimulus and response and ask 3 simple questions. What am I feeling? What is being asked? What will this cost me if I say yes? The act of asking rebalances the power. Your nervous system disarms in the presence of your own attention. Once steady, you can respond in clean phrases that close common traps. I need time. Please put that in writing. I'm not available for that, but here's what I can do. Emotional intelligence, used this way, is armor you wear under your politeness. As a sword, emotional intelligence lets you influence without wounding. You can read what someone values and speak in that language without pretending to be them. You can validate emotion without surrendering facts. You can sense when shame is about to flood a person and switch to questions that restore their dignity. You can deliver a hard message in a way that lands as care. I respect you enough to tell you the truth, and I respect myself enough to stand in it. Emotional intelligence here isn't manipulation, it is stewardship of the conditions that allow truth to be heard. You don't smuggle commands inside compliments. You don't hide costs inside comfort. You walk people to the door, label the rooms on both sides, and stand back while they choose. There is a myth that ethical influence is soft and slow, while dark manipulation is sharp and effective. The opposite is often true. Dark tactics burn trust and require constant maintenance, more hype, more pressure, more theater. Ethical influence compounds. Each truthful frame lays track for the next conversation. Each respected no makes future yes stronger. Each honest invoice pays a dividend called loyalty. You are not gathering hostages, you are building a community of adults who choose to walk with you because the way you walk lets them keep their self-respect. Still, the line is slippery, and even the well-intentioned can slide. How do you keep your footing? You keep a mirror nearby. Before you persuade, ask, if they knew everything I know, would they likely still choose this? If the answer is no, you are tricking someone. Ask, would I be okay if someone used this exact approach on someone I love? If the answer is no, change your approach. Ask, if they decline, will I keep seeing them as whole? If the answer is no, your influence is trying to buy love. When you can answer yes to these questions, your tactics clean themselves. And when you fail, and you will, you make repairs in nouns and verbs, not in fog. I rushed you. I used urgency because I wanted an outcome. I won't do that again. Trust grows in the soil of specific owning. In everyday life, ethical persuasion shows up in small sentences that carry big respect. I think this will help you because, and here's what you'd be giving up if you do it. Tell me your worries, I'll answer each one before I ask you to decide. If your answer is no, I'll still be here, I want what's best for you. These lines do not guarantee agreement. They guarantee integrity. They leave the other person taller than you found them. And any influence that requires someone to become smaller to fit it is bad architecture, no matter how noble the mission looks on a slide. If you practice persuasion for a living, selling, teaching, leading, make your craft a promise and a practice. The promise, I will not steal your agency to reach my goals. The practice, I will design my words, my timing, my frames, and my offer so that your mind and body both feel respected as you choose. This does not mean you hide your passion. It means your passion never drags someone where their consent has not gone. It means you accept the cost of doing right, fewer fast wins, more deep ones. For those who worry that refusing dark tactics will leave them powerless in a noisy world, remember what power actually is, the reliable ability to create outcomes you can live with. Fear-based compliance creates outcomes you dread maintaining. Integrity-based influence creates outcomes you are proud to stand beside. In the long arc, people move toward what preserves their dignity and away from what quietly erodes it. Be the place their dignity survives. And if you've used manipulation to get by, because you were scared, broke, under immense pressure, let this be permission to graduate. You don't have to throw away your skill, you have to sanctify it. Keep your timing. Keep your framing. Keep your keen feeling for what opens a heart. Then tell the truth and honor the no. Replace theater with clarity, pressure with pace, gimmicks with craft. There is a deeper power available to you than control, the power of being trusted, which multiplies your influence without requiring disguise. Ethical manipulation, if we must borrow that loaded word, means bending situations toward good while refusing to bend people behind their backs. It means using strategy to reduce harm, not to distribute it. It means your emotional intelligence guards the door of your own mind and opens doors for others without forcing their steps. Done well, it feels like standing in bright, honest air together, you clear, me clear, the choice clear. Chapter 16. Recognizing the red flags. Manipulation doesn't always kick down the door, most of the time it sits beside you, smiles kindly, and asks for a little more than you meant to give. The earliest warning sign is not fireworks, it's that faint tug inside you that says, something here is moving me faster than I would move myself. Detecting manipulation early begins with noticing how your body changes in someone's presence. Before the mind finds reasons, the breath tells the truth. Do you speed up when they text? Do your shoulders rise when they say, real quick? Do you feel strangely guilty before you've done anything wrong? Early red flags are subtle, a compliment that comes with a small obligation, a question shaped like a verdict, a tone that makes your no feel rude before you've said it. The content may be harmless, the pattern is not. Manipulators rarely start by breaking a boundary, they start by teaching you to doubt it. If you can catch that moment of doubt and say, I need a second, you've already interrupted the spell. Listen closely to speech, because manipulation hides in grammar. Notice when we replaces I to make your decision a group duty. Notice when obviously arrives to shut down your questions. Notice the presupposition tucked into a sentence, when you start, that skips past whether you will. Notice the soft invoice inside flattery, you're the kind of person who, that hands you a costume and asks you to wear it to pay for the praise. Watch for time tricks, now or never, last chance, everyone's waiting. Real opportunities survive daylight, theater needs darkness and speed. Pay attention to the way topics slide. You raise a clear point, the response shifts to your tone, your timing, your past mistake, anything but the point. When process becomes the whole conversation, truth has been escorted out of the room. Emotions carry their own patterns. Love bombing feels like summer on day 1 and winter on day 3 for no clear reason. You'll see pendulums, hot affection, sudden chill, big promises, small deliveries, private tenderness, public distance. Intermittent reward is a red flag dressed as romance. Guilt tripping arrives as disappointment with soft eyes, I just thought you cared more. It converts your kindness into a joystick. Manufactured urgency pairs fear with belonging, people like us don't hesitate, so that you defend identity instead of evaluating facts. Triangulation uses a third person as a mirror or a weapon, even they think you're overreacting, to make you perform for an invisible crowd. The pattern underneath is control through feelings, your nervous system becomes the leash, and they learn how to tug it. Behavior writes the clearest map. Early boundary tests look polite from the outside and off-key from the inside. They show up late and expect your grace, then treat your grace as the new schedule. They share a secret too soon to create false intimacy and harvest yours to hold later. They forget agreements, then praise you for being flexible. They apologize without nouns, sorry for whatever happened, so nothing can stick. They change the rules when you are winning and call you unfair when you notice. They seek to isolate without saying the word, a joke about your friends, a sigh when you make plans, a subtle campaign that turns your support system into a nuisance. They will occasionally do something generous that dazzles you so you feel ungrateful, raising concerns. That is not an accident, it's a shield they built in advance. So how do you defend yourself without turning every conversation into a courtroom? Start with pace. Pace is power. The moment you feel rushed by time, I decide tomorrow. Send it in writing. I'll get back to you after lunch. If the offer wilts under waiting, you have your answer. Translate feelings into facts gently and out loud. I'm noticing the goalpost moved. Last week we agreed on X. We're talking about my tone, but my point was Y. You're asking for a yes, and I don't have enough info yet. You're not attacking, you're labeling. Labels pop illusions. Use simple boundary phrases that don't invite debate. That doesn't work for me. No, thank you. I'm not available. You owe no autobiography with your limits. If someone demands reasons as a toll for respecting you, they're not asking for understanding, they're asking for leverage. When guilt arrives, separate love from obedience. I care about you and I'm still saying no. That sentence is a bridge that holds. When flattery arrives as a leash, unclip it with clarity. I appreciate the compliment, my decision is still no. If they raise the volume, lower yours. If they talk faster, slow down. If they stack issues, pick one and stay there. We can handle that after we finish this. Protect your reality with light paperwork. Summarize agreements by message. To confirm, we said X by Friday. You're not being formal, you're keeping gravity in the room. Paper trails are antidotes to gaslit memory. In new relationships, keep your other rhythms alive on purpose: sleep, friends, work, routines. Manipulation thrives in vacuum. If someone resents the time you spend maintaining your life, they're not in love with you, they're in love with access. In workplaces, redirect politics back to process. Let's put decisions in the dock. What does the policy say? Personalities can be charming, processes are sober. Train yourself to notice your tell for danger. For some, it's a small fog after conversations. For others, it's apologizing too much or explaining too long. For others, it's the sudden urge to win someone over who keeps moving away. That urge is a red flag. You're trying to earn what should be offered. When you catch it, step back. Ask, what am I trying to prove, and to whom? What would change if I stopped trying? Often the answer is simple and hard: you'd be free, and they'd be mad. Freedom is worth someone's temporary disappointment. Remember that not every misstep is manipulation. People have bad days, clumsy words, old wounds. The difference is pattern and repair. Healthy people notice when they've stepped on your toes and moved their feet. Unhealthy patterns notice your wince and keep dancing or make you apologize for bleeding. If you bring a concern and receive curiosity, you're with someone safe enough to keep. If you bring a concern and receive theater, you've been warned. And here's a tender truth: sometimes you will find red flags in your own hands. You will catch yourself using urgency to get your way, using silence to bend someone, using a compliment to soften a no you didn't want to hear. Don't turn that discovery into shame, turn it into design. Name it, own it, and choose the cleaner move. I was rushing you because I was anxious. Take your time. That kind of repair is the opposite of manipulation. It restores choice to the other person and integrity to you. Seeing red flags early is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about becoming responsible for your attention. You are the steward of your pace, your breath, your calendar, your yes. When something starts lifting your feet off your own ground, set them down. Ask the questions. Keep your language plain. Require daylight. If you're met with respect, you'll strengthen the bond. If you're met with pressure, you'll see the truth before the trap closes. Chapter 17: Breaking Free from Manipulation. Freedom rarely begins with a door swinging open. It begins with a small sentence whispered inside you: I am not crazy. Something here is wrong. That sentence is a match in the dark. Hold it. Protect it. Let it show you the edges of the room you thought you couldn't leave. Breaking free does not start with the other person changing. it starts with you reclaiming ownership of the one thing a manipulator needs to rent to survive: your attention. Your attention decides what becomes real, what grows, what withers. When someone has been steering your feelings with praise and silence, with urgency and guilt, the first step back is to slow the clock and widen the frame. You do this quietly, almost invisibly. You breathe before you answer. You ask for time when the world says there is none. You put space between the hook and your hand. In that space, you hear your own voice again, quieter than the demand but steadier than the storm. Freedom is rarely loud. It's mostly pace. Reclaiming control of your thoughts and emotions is not a chant, it's a series of small choices made consistently. Start by turning observation inward the way you were trained to watch them. Notice the exact moments your mind slides away from yourself, after a text with a certain tone, after a compliment with a hidden invoice, after a sigh that makes you perform for approval you didn't need an hour ago. Name the feeling without arguing with it. This is anxiety. This is guilt. This is the sudden urge to fix something that I didn't break. Naming is dignity. It's your way of telling your nervous system that you see it and you'll drive. Cognitive restructuring is the quiet craft of rebuilding the thought patterns that manipulation bent. You begin by catching the auto stories that arrive on cue. If I say no, I'm cruel. If I ask for time, I'm difficult. If I need proof, I'm distrustful. Hold each story up to light and test it against a kinder truth. If I say no, I'm clear. If I ask for time, I'm responsible. If I need proof, I'm careful. Then ask the question that breaks spells: what evidence would change my mind? If the answer is nothing, you're not thinking, you're defending a fear. Replace absolutes with real options. Change: I always ruin things. 2. I made a choice that didn't serve me, and I can choose again. Change: they're the only one who understands me. 2. They met a need in me, and there are other, healthier ways to meet it. Your brain learns what you repeat. Give it language you would trust a friend with. Self-trust rebuilding begins with promises you can keep today. The manipulative rhythm trained you to doubt your signals and outsource your pace. You heal that by making your own time sacred again. Sleep at the hour you promised yourself even if your phone sings your name. Eat when you said you would, not when someone finally gives you permission. Move your body because it reminds you that you are not just a head full of negotiations, you are a person with weight and warmth and needs that are not negotiations at all. Keep one small promise each morning and one each night. When you prove to yourself that your word matters in private, you stop giving it away cheaply in public. Setting psychological boundaries is less about building walls and more about writing your terms. A boundary is a sentence that says, "This is what I will do to protect what I value." It is not an instruction for the other person, it is a commitment to yourself. You can say, "I don't have conversations after 10 p.m., and then hang up when the hour arrives. You can say, "I respond to messages once a day," and then put your phone in another room when your fingers itch. You can say, "If the topic changes to my tone, I will pause the talk until we return to the point, and then pause it." You are not asking for permission, you are practicing sovereignty. Some people will call this cold. It is not cold. It is clarity that keeps you warm. When you start holding these lines, expect backlash from patterns that have been eating for free. Manipulation doesn't disappear when you recognize it, it often changes shape: more sweetness, more storms, more history, more blame. Do not negotiate with weather. Return to your map: pace, proof, boundary, breath. If someone raises their voice, lower yours. If they stack 5 issues, answer 1. If they ask for reasons, give one simple truth: this doesn't work for me. Watch what survives that sentence. The person who values your person will adjust. The person who values your access will accuse. Their reaction is a mirror: look, and then walk accordingly. There is a part of freedom that happens off stage. You need witnesses who remember the sound of your real laugh. Call them and tell the unedited story. Not the courtroom version, the human one. I feel small around them. I forget what I wanted before the conversation began. I'm tired of being a good person as defined by someone who profits when I am quiet. The right witness will not turn this into entertainment. They will place your words back into your hands and say, "You're not crazy." I see it too. Borrow their steadiness until yours returns. If you don't have that witness nearby, be it for yourself in writing. Keep a simple log. What was said, what was promised, what you felt, what you chose. A journal is not a diary in this season, it's an anchor. On days when the fog rolls in, read yesterday's clarity and stand on it. Breaking free is not only subtraction, less of them, fewer traps, it is also addition, more life that tastes better than the game. Fill the time you used to spend managing someone else's moods with the dull, holy tasks that make a self. Learn something slowly. Make food that takes more than one pan. Walk a loop without a destination. Put on music and tidy a room until it feels like it remembers you. These are not distractions, they are signals to your nervous system that safety can be ordinary, that peace does not have to be earned with performance, that your day can hold without another person's approval stitching it together. You may feel grief as you choose this. Manipulation steals minutes, and sometimes years. Let the grief do its work without turning it into a sentence. I stayed too long becomes, I learned what it takes to leave. I lost my voice becomes, I am hearing it now. If you can loosen the story that mistakes survival for failure, you will walk out carrying strength you did not have before. And if you relapse, answer the text you promised not to, agree to the meeting you meant to refuse, don't throw away the map as punishment. Course correct gently. Freedom is not ruined by one wrong turn, it is practiced by taking the next right one. When you are ready, forgive yourself for all the times you said yes to keep the room from breaking. You were managing a storm with the tools you had. Now you are building a climate where the storms visit less and leave faster. And if you find yourself tempted to use the same tactics on others, silence as leash, praise as bribe, urgency as theater, stop and face the fear underneath. Ask for what you want without bending anyone to get it. Ethical power is quieter than control, but it lasts longer and lets you sleep. There will be a day, not dramatic, just bright, when you notice the absence of noise. No countdown clocks in your chest. No rehearsed defenses in your mouth. No secret ledger tracking the cost of every kindness. In that quiet, you will feel something that is better than victory. You will feel ordinary and safe inside your own life. That is the destination. Not triumph over someone else. Peace with yourself. Chapter 18. Building Mental Immunity. Strength isn't the absence of pressure, it's the quiet skill of staying yourself when the room tries to turn you into someone else. The paradox is simple, the softer you are with your inner world, the harder you become to bend from the outside. Mental immunity is not a shield you strap on once, it's a living system built from habits, questions, and the way you treat your own mind when it's unsure. It starts with self-awareness because you cannot defend a self you do not know. Before you memorize any tactic, listen to how your body tells the truth. Notice the signature of your yes and the flavor of your no. Your yes feels spacious, like air enters the room, your no feels dense and steady, like your feet remember the ground. When you are pressured, your breath shortens, your shoulders climb, your thoughts speed up and become narrow. None of this is failure. It is data. Immunity grows when you treat these signals as trusted messengers, not inconveniences to be silenced so other people can be comfortable. Critical thinking then becomes your gentle referee. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that asks a few good questions at the right time and changes the game. What is being claimed? What is the evidence? What is assumed for me? What happens if I do nothing? The moment you ask those, the spell of urgency thins. Everyone knows becomes who exactly? Obviously becomes show me. Only chance becomes according to whom. You don't need a debate, you need daylight. Daylight often looks like one sentence written on paper where you can see it with your eyes. Here is the promise. Here is the cost. Here is the timeline. Here is my choice when I am rested. Mental immunity is practical like that. It doesn't rely on willpower alone, it relies on environment and pace that make good choices the default instead of a heroic act. To stay grounded amid emotional pressure, you practice a rhythm that manipulative tactics can't digest: slowness, clarity, and consistent boundaries. Slowness steals the fuel from manufactured urgency. Clarity turns fog into furniture you can move. Boundaries keep the door to you on your hinges. When the heat rises, drop your words per minute. Let silence do half your work. Name the tactic without insult: I'm noticing urgency, and I make better decisions tomorrow. Name your need without an essay: I need this in writing. Name your limit without apology: that doesn't work for me. Your nervous system hears you and steadies. The room hears you and chooses whether to meet you in daylight or reveal itself by resisting it. Grounding is not a mood, it's a set of moves you can repeat even when your heart is loud. Mental immunity expands when you build a calm inner courtroom where truth is tried with kindness. Cognitive distortions, catastrophizing, mind reading, all or nothing thinking, love chaos, they starve in process. When your mind says, if I don't say yes, I'll lose everything, answer with a narrow question: what exactly will I lose now, and what remains? When it says, they think I'm selfish, ask, what evidence do I have outside my fear? When it says, it's always like this, ask, name 3 times it wasn't. You are not arguing with yourself to win, you're inviting your frightened brain to step into a larger room. That room is the present, where specifics live and spells go to die. Inner strength grows in the same soil as tenderness. You cannot bully yourself into resilience, you can only train it. Train it by keeping small promises to yourself, because self-trust is interest-bearing. Wake up when you said you would and greet that as proof you are the kind of person you can rely on. End the day with one simple act that belongs to you alone: 5 quiet breaths by the window, a paragraph in a book, a walk without your phone. These are not luxuries, they are immune cells. They tell your mind, I will not abandon you to the loudest thing. Over time, that message becomes a posture. You walk into rooms carrying an invisible chair, a place to sit inside yourself when the table gets noisy. Resilience doesn't mean your feelings shrink. It means your container grows. You will still feel fear, but it won't pick your words. You will still feel guilt, but it won't sign your name. You will still crave approval, but you won't rent your decisions for a compliment. The way you get there is by rehearsing presence before you need it. When a small frustration arrives, practice breathing through it without crafting a speech. When a minor request pushes your schedule, practice saying, not today, and living with the echo. When you make a mistake, practice a repair with nouns: I missed the deadline, I'll deliver at noon, so shame does not become your manager. These small drills are weightlifting for the psyche. Heavy moments feel lighter when you've lifted often. Part of immunity is story choice. Manipulation is powerful because it offers a fast story where you are either special or doomed. Your counter story should be slower and sturdier: I am teachable. I am allowed to pause. I can change my mind with new information. I can love people and refuse their timeline. I can be kind without being available. I can be firm without being unkind. Write these on paper. Say them in your own voice. Your nervous system trusts repetition more than brilliance. Give it the same simple truths until they feel like home. Build contexts that protect you when you are tired, because tired minds sign the worst contracts. Set defaults in your favor: news at set times, not all day; messages in batches, not as alarms; spending decisions after sleep, not after ads. Keep people around you who tell you the slow truth when you are tempted by the fast one. Ask a friend to be your sober mind 4 big moves and return the favor. Immunity is communal. One steady voice nearby can save you a month of undoing. When pressure arrives wearing love, let your values speak out loud. What matters here? Health. integrity, peace, learning. If the proposed path damages those to protect an image, you know where to stand. Values turn every choice into a compass question instead of a popularity contest. A manipulator can argue with your feelings and your facts. It's harder to argue with you living your values on purpose, in plain sight, without theater. That is the quiet power of a person who knows what they stand for and is willing to bear the cost of standing. Forgive your relapses quickly. Immunity is not perfection, it's recovery speed. You will still click, still flinch, still agree when you meant to ask for time. Notice it, correct course, and leave no bruise on yourself for learning out loud. Shame is an immune suppressant. Curiosity is medicine. Ask, what did that moment teach me about my trigger? Adjust the environment. Tweak the script you'll use next time. Thank yourself for catching it today instead of a year from now. Inner strength isn't dramatic, it's cumulative. And remember, a grounded life is not empty of passion. It is full of chosen passion. You will argue, love, create, hustle, rest, only now from a center that doesn't wobble when someone else's script arrives. Confidence, in its cleanest form, is not a roar the crowd can hear, it's the warmth in your chest that says, I can wait. I can ask. I can leave. I can stay. I am allowed to be this person in this moment. From there, influence stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a tool. You can listen deeply without losing shape. You can persuade without hiding the bill. You can be moved and still decide. Chapter 19: The Art of Countermanipulation. The most powerful move in a rigged game is not to flip the table, it's to stop playing by the rules you didn't agree to. The paradox is simple: you don't defeat manipulation by becoming louder, you defeat it by becoming unmovable, so the force that came to bend you ends up folding in on itself. Turning manipulation against the manipulator begins with a quiet decision: I will not provide the fuel. Manipulation is a machine that runs on three things: your haste, your hunger for approval, and your need to explain. Remove any one of them and the engine starts to sputter. Remove all three and the machine stalls in front of you, harmless as scrap metal. So you slow what they try to hurry. You affirm yourself when they try to grade you. You shorten your sentences when they try to drown you in debate. This is not a performance for the room, it's a private alignment. You are choosing to be governed by your values instead of their tempo. That choice is the fulcrum. Everything turns there. Psychological judo is the craft of redirecting energy rather than resisting it head-on. If a person pushes with urgency, you pivot into time, I decide tomorrow. If they pull with flattery, you pivot into criteria, thank you, I'll choose based on X, Y, Z. If they attack your tone, you pivot into content, we can discuss tone later, right now I'm staying with this point. The point is not to win an argument, it is to keep your center while their momentum runs past you. Judo is different from wrestling because it honors gravity. You don't outmuscle the move, you outplace it. In conversation, that means you don't meet escalation with escalation. You meet it with an angle, one sentence that returns the discussion to terms you can stand on. The more they swing, the more you step to the side where the punch spends itself on air. A manipulator relies on reflex. They press the same buttons expecting the same song. Counter-manipulation changes your choreography. When guilt arrives, after everything I've done for you, you don't defend your gratitude, you define the decision, I appreciate you, and the answer is no. When triangulation arrives, everyone thinks you're overreacting, you don't fight ghosts, you refuse their presence, I'm speaking with you, not with everyone. When love bombing arrives, grand promises, fast pace, you don't plead for moderation, you supply it, this is exciting, and I move slowly. Each line takes their energy and pours it into your container. You are not dodging. You are shaping. Strategic calmness is not the absence of feeling, it is the practice of letting feelings pass through while your choices remain anchored. Calmness is strategic because of what it does to the room. Manipulators expect the first spike, your fear, your shame, your anger, and build the next move on top of it. When the spike doesn't arrive, their script loses lines. You will feel the pull to react. Your jaw will want to explain. Your chest will want to shout. This is where you breathe so slowly that your words must cue behind your breath to enter the world. This is where you lower your voice by one shade so their volume can no longer find purchase. This is where you let silence be the punctuation that makes your sentence heavy enough to stand without decoration. Calm turns a tug-of-war into a rope on the floor. No one can keep pulling a rope that does not resist. They either drop it or reveal that they needed the struggle more than the outcome. Emotional detachment in conflict is often misunderstood. It is not coldness. It is not contempt. It is the discipline of not tying your identity to the next 5 minutes. You detach not from the human, but from the manipulation. You stop trying to heal the person while they are using harm to get their way. You stop auditioning for the role of good in their script. You ask yourself, what is mine to carry, and you set down everything that isn't, how they feel about themselves, how they will spin the story to others, how loud they will get if you don't bend. Detachment gives you the room to choose a response that serves the long term rather than feeding the short-term fire. Sometimes the best countermove is no move at all, no reply to the bait, no correction to the misquote, no rush to fix a mood that will be replaced by another mood in an hour. You are not being passive, you are refusing to be drafted. You can also set traps for the tactic without trapping the person. Ask for specifics wherever fog gathers. What exactly are you asking me to commit to? Ask for daylight where darkness is convenient. Please put that in writing. Ask for pace where urgency is theater. If this expires tonight, it's not for me. Ask for accountability where blame is the culture. Who will be responsible if this goes wrong? These questions are not barbs, they are mirrors. Either the manipulator steps through them into honesty, or they recoil, and their recoil shows everyone what words could not. Psychological judo works because it doesn't need the crowd to agree. Physics agrees. In groups, countermanipulation is a choreography of norms. You normalize pauses, let's take 5, so the panic can't rent the room. You normalize dissent, let's hear the strongest opposite case, so the illusion of unanimity dissolves. You normalize receipts, I'm posting the notes now, so memory can't be edited by status. You normalize boundaries, we don't discuss private lives here, so personal leverage dries up. A manipulator will try to reframe these norms as obstacles to progress or proof of disloyalty. Hold anyway. Good process is slow in the middle and fast at the end. Bad process is fast in the middle and expensive at the end. Turning manipulation back on itself also means letting consequences do the talking. If someone only respects your time when you're unavailable, become consistently unavailable to last-minute demands. If someone rewrites agreements, move all agreements to channels you control. If someone detonates when you set a boundary, set a smaller boundary more often until their explosions run out of audience. Your goal is not to punish, it is to remove the reward structure that kept the tactic profitable. Manipulation is a business model. When the margin disappears, so does the product. There is a gentler tactic that looks like surrender and isn't. It's radical agreement, agreeing with the part of the statement that is safe to agree with, which removes the charge without conceding the core. You never care about my needs. You answer, I care, and I'm not available for this request. You're so selfish. You answer, I am taking care of myself here. You think you're better than everyone. You answer, I do think this choice is better, and you can make yours. Radical agreement refuses the identity bait and returns to the decision. The fight dies in the space where there is nothing to grab. Expect that some manipulations will escalate when they stop working. This is not proof that your approach is failing, it's proof that it is moving. Keep your rhythm. Continue to ask for terms, for time, for specifics. Continue to use short sentences that hold their own weight. Continue to let silence do the heavy lifting. Continue to walk away from tables where the bill always lands in your lap. The person across from you will either adjust because they value access to you, or they will search for a room with cheaper rent. Your future self will thank you either way. If you carry tenderness for the manipulator, maybe it's family, maybe a partner who is more wounded than wicked, counter-manipulation can still be kind. Kind does not mean compliant. It means you stop teaching them that theater earns results. It means you tell the truth without delivering it like a weapon. I love you, and I won't respond to raised voices. I hear you, and I'll decide tomorrow. I understand you're upset, and I'm not taking responsibility for your feelings. Kindness here is not a performance of sweetness, it's the refusal to feed cycles that keep both of you small. The real test of this art shows up when you are tired. You will be tempted to defend, to explain, to buy peace with a quick yes. Forgive yourself when you slip. Recovery speed is victory. Notice it, reset, return to your lines. One clean sentence can pull you out of a maze 10 paragraphs deep. This doesn't work for me. I choose not to. I'm done now. Put those sentences where you can see them. You're not trying to win a perfect game. You are trying to build a habit of self-respect under pressure. Habits, not heroics, keep you free. And then there is the final move, the one most people underestimate, leaving. The cleanest counter to chronic manipulation is exit. Not dramatic, not vengeful, just exit. You take your attention, your reliability, your kindness, your genius, and you spend them where consent is mutual and costs are named. You do not make a speech. You do not wait for permission. You do not convert clarity into cruelty. You step into a life that does not require defensive brilliance to be livable. The manipulator will call you names. Let the wind have them. You will have your hours back, and with your hours, yourself. Chapter 20. Mastering Influence Without Corruption. Real power isn't the roar that bends a crowd, it's the quiet integrity that makes people want to stand beside you when no one is watching. Here is the paradox that should guide us. You can learn every dark tactic in the book and still choose light, and when you do, your influence lasts longer, cuts cleaner, and lets you sleep. To master influence without corruption, you begin by telling the truth about what influence is. It isn't dominance. It isn't getting your way. Influence is the reliable ability to move reality in a direction that preserves human dignity, including your own. The dark knowledge you've gathered in this journey, frames, timing, anchoring, silence, status, narrative, these are tools. Tools don't have souls. The soul of your influence is your intention and your willingness to expose the terms. You stop pretending neutrality and say plainly, this is where I'm trying to take us, this is what it will cost, this is who benefits, this is who doesn't, and this is the door if you want out. When people hear that, they don't feel handled, they feel honored. And honored people become partners, not prisoners. Using influence to inspire begins with a promise you make to yourself, I will not buy speed with someone else's self-respect. You can move a team without manufacturing panic by naming reality and inviting agency. Here's the problem, here are 3 paths, here are the trade-offs, tell me what I'm missing. You can move a loved one toward health without installing a leash. I want this for you. I'll support you if you choose it. I will also respect your no. You can move an audience without smuggling commands inside compliments. If this resonates, here's your next step. If it doesn't, take what helps and leave the rest. Ethical influence leaves doors open. It trusts that a yes that can walk away will walk with you farther. Leadership, clean leadership, refuses the old exchange between charisma and truth. You keep your clarity even when it shrinks your applause. You practice the rare skill of naming uncertainty without infecting people with fear. Here's what we know, here's what we don't, here's the plan, here's what we'll do if the plan breaks. Your status becomes a service, not a shortcut, because you use it to widen participation, not to narrow scrutiny. You make dissent safe. You reward the person who slows the room to save it. You hold the line on pace when the loud want theater, not results. People feel the difference in their nervous systems. Around corrupt power, bodies brace. Around honest power, bodies breathe. Breathing bodies think better, create better, love better. That is the practical miracle of ethical influence. It increases collective intelligence. Integrating dark knowledge with moral wisdom is not a philosophical puzzle, it's a daily practice of choosing use over abuse. You see a frame being weaponized, so you widen it instead of flipping it. You sense a countdown clock turned into a whip, so you restore time and make the decision tomorrow. You notice the leverage in someone's fear, and instead of pressing it for compliance, you name it so they can stand on it. I hear the fear of failing. Let's size it honestly and build a plan sturdy enough to hold it. You keep your mastery sharp but your motive soft, reduce harm, clarify choices, elevate agency, share credit, carry blame. This is not saint talk. It's strategy that compounds. Every clean move earns trust. Every earned trust lifts the ceiling on what you can build together. To become both aware and unbreakable, you train two muscles at once, perception and posture. Perception sees the gears behind the smile, when praise is a leash, when silence is a test, when urgency is theater. You don't panic at the sight of these, you simply adjust. Posture is how you stand while you adjust. The posture is unhurried. It answers bait with facts, chaos with calendars, volume with gravity. It uses short sentences because short sentences carry weight. That doesn't work. I need time. Put it in writing. What are the risks? Who owns the outcome? You repeat them until your bones memorize them. Unbreakable doesn't mean hard, it means you bend where you choose and never at the hinge of your self-respect. Guard your center with habits that make corruption expensive. Keep a small counsel that tells you the slow truth when ambition starts whispering shortcuts. Publish your principles where you can see them while you're tempted: consent, clarity, dignity, repair. When you violate one, don't hide it. Own nouns and verbs. I rushed you for results. I won't do that again. Here's the new process. You think this will shrink your power? It won't. It will deepen it. People follow those who repair in daylight, because daylight is the only place a future can be built that doesn't require a mask. There will be moments when dark tactics look faster. You could win the deal with scarcity theater. You could secure the vote with a simplified villain. You could keep the relationship by turning guilt into a guardian dog. This is where you practice the discipline of slow victory. You leave money on the table that costs your integrity. You leave applause in the room that would cost someone else their voice. You let the short win die so the long win can live. Your reward is not applause, it's alignment. Alignment is the fuel that lets you keep going when the world is loud and your heart is tired. If you want a simple test for corruption, try this. Would I be proud if someone used this exact move on someone I love? If not, upgrade the move. Or this: if they knew everything I know, the trade-offs, the costs, the quiet calculus, would they likely choose it anyway? If not, reveal more or don't sell it. Or this: if they say no, will I still treat them as whole? If not, you weren't inviting, you were hunting. These questions are not fences around influence, they are the rails that keep your train on a track you won't regret. Remember too that protection is part of ethical power. No is a rescue word. Use it to shield your team from burn, your family from chaos, your own mind from the addiction of being needed. Protect with structure more than speeches. Calendars protect. Budgets protect. Defaults protect. Rituals protect. Protect with transparency, sunlight that makes secrets feel awkward and trust feel normal. Protect with exits, clear doors for people to leave agreements without shame so loyalty remains loyalty and never rots into hostage-taking. If you have tasted the thrill of manipulation and liked it, forgive yourself for being human. Power feels good. Control feels safe. Then graduate. Keep the craft, cleanse the aim. Use your timing to deliver truth when it can be heard, not to force a yes. Use your framing to make complexity livable, not to collapse it into propaganda. Use your charisma to open rooms to more voices, not to take all the air. You will lose some fast wins. You will gain the kind of allies who don't need to be managed with theater. That trade is the difference between heat and light. And if you have been on the other end, pushed, pulled, framed, rushed, take this chapter as your quiet license to lead anyway. You do not have to become hard to become strong. You can keep your empathy and stop renting it to every urgency. You can keep your kindness and refuse its conscription. You can keep your hope and pair it with a spine. The world does not need another charming tyrant. It needs steady builders who know the dark and walk in daylight anyway. Imagine the day your influence is a place people rest in, not a storm they survive. Imagine the room you run breathing easier when you enter. Imagine your home where truth isn't punished and love isn't leveraged. Imagine your craft, teaching, building, selling, healing, done so cleanly that your results stand even when you step away. That is mastery without corruption, power that doesn't need a mask because it has nothing to hide. Conclusion: the power you can't unsee. Once your eyes adjust to the dark, you don't fear it, you read it. That is the turn you have made here. The tricks that once felt like weather now look like architecture, timing arranged like a corridor, praise hung like a mirror, urgency set like a trapdoor. You can't unknow this. You shouldn't. Knowledge that once protected other people's power now protects yours. When you understand manipulation, the world stops being a blur of motives and becomes legible. You notice how a headline squeezes your breath on purpose, how a silence in a meeting pulls confessions out of the room, how a compliment arrives with a leash clipped quietly to its end. You see the strings, you see the hands, you see the stage lights that made ordinary words look holy. This could make you cynical. Let it make you clear instead. Seeing the strings doesn't ruin the show, it gives you the choice to watch, to walk out, or to build a better stage. There is a softness available to you now that wasn't possible before, not the softness of surrender, but the softness of certainty. You do not need to argue with every frame or wrestle every tactic to the floor. You can slow the tempo, widen the lens, and ask for daylight. You can listen without being drafted, comfort without being captured, admire without being owned. This is what real power feels like on the inside, not adrenaline, not applause, room. Room to pause before you answer, to ask the question no one else has asked, to walk away from a bargain that sells your piece too cheaply. Power is not a roar, it's a steady pulse that doesn't abandon you when the room gets loud. People will still try to move you. Some will be clumsy, some will be brilliant, some will be sincere. You won't need to label them villains or saints. You'll watch what their moves cost, what their wins require, whether their outcomes can stand in daylight. You'll choose your distance. You'll keep your calendar. You'll let your no be a rescue word and your yes be a promise with weight. And when someone asks why you are so calm, you will tell the truth. Calm isn't the absence of pressure, it's the presence of options. The final message is simple, hard, and liberating. Control yourself first, only then can you master others, if mastering others is even what you want. The most persuasive person in any room is the one who has already negotiated with their own fear, envy, and hunger and refused to let them speak for the soul. When your impulses don't drive, no one else can hotwire you. When your values set the pace, urgency looks like theater, not fate. When your boundaries are rituals instead of speeches, respect stops being a wish and becomes a rule you enforce gently and consistently. Mastery begins in the mirror, not on the battlefield. So keep your tools sharp and your motives soft. Use framing to illuminate, not to compress. Use timing to let truth land, not to ambush consent. Use charisma to open rooms, not to take all the air. Speak in short sentences that carry your center. I need time. That doesn't work. Put it in writing. Here is my standard. Here is my care. Here is my line. Build relationships where those sentences are not seen as threats but as the grammar of mutual dignity. If you ever feel the old fog returning, return to the basics you earned here. Breathe, slow, ask, name, decide. Touch something that does not lie, cold water, sunlight, a page. Read your own notes out loud. Remember that confusion is a tactic and clarity is a practice. And if you slip, if a clever frame catches you or a hot promise pulls you, offer yourself repair, not punishment. Recovery speed is part of mastery. You can't unsee the strings, but you can choose what you do with them. Tie them into better stories. Cut the ones that choke. Refuse the ones that turn love into a leash. We end here not with suspicion, but with stewardship. Your attention is a resource, your voice is a boundary, your presence is a signal. Use them like a builder, not a bully. If this journey gave you clearer eyes and steadier hands, stay close. There's more to explore, scripts to practice, visuals to anchor this wisdom, and a library of tools we'll keep refining together. Like this if a sentence landed, subscribe if you want the next map, and share it with the one person who needs to hear this tonight. You are not a puppet. You can see the strings. And you know exactly where to cut.